Class is in session, hitting the books here on Pub Sports Radio, Monday, August 28th. Week 0 in the books, and week 1 is on the horizon. And we'll be breaking it down for you here as we do each and every Monday. Ian Cameron, Conor Mack. We're going to get into the games very quickly, just briefly. The only thing I'm going to say about week 0 is it's great to have college football back, and it's great to be able to cash a ticket on a team when their quarterback has 4 fucking passing yards for the entire football game, and that is what happened with Florida International. I don't know how they covered and actually still had a chance to almost win the damn game straight up when their quarterback threw for a whopping 4 passing yards, but it cashed. That's all that matters. C-Mac, how did Saturday treat you?
That was it. That was my only play, and I'm glad it cashed too, because they didn't do anything the rest of the game. They're pretty bad, but we'll see as it goes on. I thought they did some things all right. Hey, bust a long TD, get a couple plays. And La Tech, though, similar bad results. Missed, field goals, sloppy play. And I'm kind of glad I stayed on. I wish I was on a few other ones, but glad I didn't touch New Mexico there. Obviously, Rourke gets hurt. They're cautious to take him out. I didn't play that game. I didn't, so I just stayed off the rest. I kind of, wish I took the points a little bit with San Jose, because I thought they'd score on SC, and we'll get to them today with their defense. But yeah, FIU in the end was my only bet, and I'm ready this week. I will not have one bet this week.
No, I should hope not. Yeah, I should hope not with the massive, regular-sized college football card. We got our weeknight games. We've got the big Saturday slate for the first time this season. So as you know, we do every weeknight game. And we do many of the bigger Saturday games. That's going to be the format once again here on this show as far as breaking down the games that are concerned. So let's get into it. We'll begin with Thursday night, August 31st, Kent State Golden Flashes taking on the UCF Knights. It's UCF 37-point home favorites right now, 57 the total here in this game. There may not be any bigger change from one year to the next than with Kent State. That program was absolutely gutted in the offseason, just ravaged in the transfer portal, losing a ton of key players, no returning starters really either side of the football. And we're talking about key players, 14 of them. Devontae Walker, Dante Cephas, who was a great receiver, Marquez Cooper, quarterback Colin Schlee, who was their starter last year. It's a mass exodus. And the mass exodus was caused by the sudden resignation of Sean Lewis, the former head coach who went to Deion Sanders in Colorado to become the offensive coordinator there. So Kenny Burns now takes over as the head coach here for Kent State. They have a new OC, obviously, now, Matt Johnson. And we're also going to see not only a team with so much change, there is a big quarterback battle going on that was still going on in fall camp. So right now they're leaning toward the incumbent from last year, returning as the starter, but that's still up for debate. But definitely when you look at this offense, they are going to be really slowing things down. We remember under Sean Lewis how they were one of the fastest paced offenses in the country. Not going to be the case anymore. An emphasis on running the football, slowing it down, control the clock. That's going to be the onus on Kent State offensively now moving forward. The question is who's going to start. It was Kargman, Chandler Galbin, Tommy Ulatowski. Griffin Brewster even was in the battle for this quarterback spot, so they seem to be kind of unsure. They've got a pretty decent running back group with Xavier Williams and Kai Thomas, who transfers in from Kansas. But, at receiver, there's not a lot in terms of high-level skill position weapons in the passing game. And the defense, which, wasn't very good last year, they're going to be equally as bad this year, it looks like. And the secondary in particular could be rough. For UCF, not too many changes. Still have Gus Malzahn head coach. You still have John Reese Plumlee, but there is one key change. Darren Hinshaw now, the new offensive coordinator, the guy that played quarterback for this UCF team. So it's really his alma mater, and now he's the OC here under Malzahn. And the reason I want to point this out is because, we've known UCF's offense to be run-oriented, tempo spread, run-heavy. John Reese Plumlee, a guy that we think better of running quarterback than a pure pocket passer. Well, Gus Malzahn brings in Hinshaw specifically to help the passing game. He thinks Hinshaw can really work with John Reese Plumlee in the passing game, make him an accurate, more polished passer. And from all indications, he's taken a huge step forward in fall camp with his accuracy, working with the new OC, Darren Hinshaw. So that is significant because if John Reese Plumlee can get the throwing element to match how good he is athletically running with the football as a dual threat quarterback, then the sky's the limit for UCF, offensively. And I know they lose Isaiah Bauer, the running back, but they've still got a couple of really good options there, in my opinion, to be able to run the ball. With RJ Harvey especially going to take the lead back role, Javon Baker, Kobe Hudson leading them at receiver, Alec Holler, solid tight end. They're going to be able to put up points. And when you think of how Kent State's got nobody back on both sides of the ball, including on defense, this could be ugly for them trying to stop this UCF offense, especially if John Reese Plumlee's a better passer, as we're being led to believe based on the fall camp reports. So I kind of think a team total toward the over for UCF would be worth a look. I prefer that than the full game over because I just don't know how much success, if any, Kent State's going to have. Starting over, new quarterback on offense, total scheme change from a high up-tempo, pass-heavy offense now to more of a slow it down, control the clock, run-heavy offense. It's a big change in scheme from one year to the next. So not a strong opinion on this game, but I do have a lean at the very least to UCF team total here over. Even though it's pretty high, you're looking at around, it looks like it'll probably be, when you look at their 37-point favorite. So that team total, when it's all said and done here, is probably going to be in that 42, 45 range. I would expect they're probably going to be able to put up a lot of points here. What do you think here, Connor? Kent State, UCF?
You mentioned it. This Kent State team, probably one of the teams hit the hardest, just tons of kids gone here by the transfer portal. You know what? He's gone, but we'll see. We'll get to Schlee going to UCLA because I have questions with him, even though he's okay here at Kent State. You mentioned the top wideout, but to Penn State, even their kicker, he went to Ohio State. He just they don't have much left. The defense wasn't very good. The flip side, Plumlee's back. I think he'll be even better. You mentioned it, dual threat quarterback. I think he gets the job done. You mentioned Harvey. I think this is just too many points to lay. I just, this week one here, I know Kent State is bad, but I want nothing to do with the game. Free bet, I'd maybe take these points, but I'm off.
Yeah, they're near the bottom of FBS college football this season, Kent State, as far as returning production is concerned. And that certainly is a worry when you're going on the road for an opener like this against UCF at home, making their Big 12 conference debut as well. So probably fired up for that.
They beat up on the MAC too the last few years. Just kicked their ass too. UCF.
Yeah, no question. So tough ask for Kent State in rebuild mode for their opener. All right, NC State, UConn. We've got NC State 15-point road favorites. The total 46.5 here in this matchup here. I'm definitely interested in the home dog here. UConn is one of those teams that down the stretch of last season, you were able to cash some tickets with them. And I got to give Jim Mora Jr. just a hell of a lot of credit. This cupboard was bare when he took it over, and what he was able to get. Keep in mind all the injuries that decimated this team last year. They were without their best quarterback for almost the entire year. And he was out, and they had to deal with that. They had to deal with significant injuries with different position groups. I know the O-line was banged up for a portion of last year. They were missing some pieces in the back seven on defense. But now when you look at this UConn squad, they've got their quarterback back. Although it's funny, we were thinking Taquan Roberson, Conor, was going to be the starting quarterback. He's the guy that got injured early last year and didn't play after that. But he actually got beaten out by Joseph Fagnano. Here, the quarterback will be the starter here against NC State. So very interesting development here for UConn, that the guy I thought was going to be their quarterback and win the job in fall camp actually didn't win the job. So it's Joseph Fagnano who's going to be the starter here for UConn in this game. NC State on the flip side. NC State, a team that really relied on their defense last year under Dave Doran. We know that they were an excellent defensive team, but man, a lot of those key performers and key players on that side of the ball are gone from last year's team. So I do think they're going to take a step back there on the defensive side of the football this season. They were a really, really strong, solid defensive unit last year, and just a lot of production lost from that team, from that side of the football coming into this season. And on the flip side, some changes on offense. Devin Leary, who we know was the starting quarterback here for many years, transfers to Kentucky, where he'll start there now. And they bring in Brennan Armstrong, someone we're all familiar with, many years at Virginia. And what's pretty interesting here, Conor, is that Brennan Armstrong is going to reunite with a guy that was his offensive coordinator at Virginia 2 seasons ago and probably had his best college football season of his career. Not probably. He did have his best college football season 2 years ago. We remember that Virginia squad 2 years ago. They were lighting it up offensively. Brennan Armstrong was just throwing the ball all over the field, and he was just ripping it up in the passing game with Robert Anae as his offensive coordinator. Robert Anae was at Syracuse for 1 year, and now he's here at NC State reuniting with Brennan Armstrong when the two of them were together at Virginia a couple of years ago. So I think that means you're going to see maybe you wouldn't think new quarterback, new OC with a new team, there's not going to be any offensive cohesion. Maybe not. There could be some offensive cohesion right away because this OC and this quarterback have been together before, and they're very familiar with each other and what they want on offense and what the scheme is going to look like. And now you've got a quarterback in Armstrong that can relay that, to his O-linemen, to his running backs, to his receivers, tell them, hey, I've been in this system before. Here's what we want to do. So I think that's a benefit here for NC State. That being said, you're on the road for your opener. You lost a lot of pieces on defense, and I'm really high on this UConn. Not that they're going to be like a 7, 8, 9 win team all of a sudden, but I do think they're going to challenge for bowl eligibility to get to 6 wins this year. And I like them getting this number of points here at home against NC State. And the more this total drops, and I know there could be some showers on Thursday night in Storrs, Connecticut for this game, but the more this total drops, the more I'm interested in the over, as long as the weather holds up. Because I think NC State's up on offense, down on defense a little bit coming into this season. And I think UConn on the flip side here, their quarterback room is finally healthy and ready to go. That should help their offensive side of it as well. What do you think here, Conor? Pretty interesting Thursday night battle, NC State, UConn.
Yeah, let's get to NC State real quick. Last year, they beat down this UConn team, but that was at home. NC State just hasn't been very good on the road the last few years. I think they're 7-19, something like that, their last 25. What do we get out of Armstrong, here in this offense? Are they going to really throw it around? I'm not so sure. The NC State defense will come to play, I think. And you talked about Jim Mora did a great job last year with this team. Roberson goes out, Turner comes in, and then, like you mentioned, I was just shocked that Fagnano won this job, kind of, I guess, a little bit out of nowhere in this one. I got to take a look at the points with the home dog. One thing, though, with UConn, they got beat up when they stepped up against some better teams. They got their ass kicked. So can that defense come to play? Tight end, they got that kid, Hansen from Michigan. They have a few good linebackers. The secondary, isn't great. So, but as a home dog here, double-digit points, I am definitely looking their way in this game. And at this total, as long as it stays 47, 46.5, I definitely have to lean to the under.
All right, liking the under here, 46.5, and UConn. So we're split on the total, but we agree with UConn at this number. It might be a good side here in their season opener. All right, Big Ten. This is a Fox national television game on Thursday night. It's the Gus Johnson and Joel Klatt debut for the season. Nebraska and Minnesota. The Minnesota Golden Gophers, 7.5 point home favorites, depending on which book you are looking at. 43.5 the total in this game. Wow. Nebraska, I was surprised that their win total was 6.5, quite honestly. I think that's a little ambitious, even though I really like the hire. I do. And how can you not? Matt Rule should be a really good hire for this program. We saw him turn around the Temple Owls. We saw him turn around the Baylor Bears. Obviously, it didn't work for him in his NFL tour of duty with the Carolina Panthers, but now he's back in his comfort zone here in the college football ranks. And I think he will turn around Nebraska, but it's not going to be an immediate fix. It's not going to be an immediate turnaround. But I definitely like the hire. They've got some pieces to work with. On the offensive side of the football, going to be interesting to see how they work it. They're definitely going to put an emphasis now, finally, on let's beat up the other team at the line of scrimmage and let's commit to running the football. You're going to get that with a Matt Rule coach team, and that should help Jeff Sims, who, comes in as the starting quarterback after many years at Georgia Tech. Keep in mind, a lot of people blame Jeff Sims for the problems with the Georgia Tech, team, especially on offense. I thought he was okay. The problem was Georgia Tech They didn't recruit as well as they've done in the past. I don't think the coaching was particularly good. And I think the fact that Jeff Sims is going to have a team that's committed to running the football is going to help him as well as he steps in as the quarterback here for this Nebraska Cornhuskers team. The defensive side of the football was never really any good under Scott Frost, and it's going to be interesting to see if it can develop here. There are some new faces. It'll be interesting to see how they develop. But if Sims can stay healthy, look, because he was obviously always battling injuries. But I think when you look at it, they're going to have to really improve because look at the numbers and just everything. They couldn't run the football. They couldn't stop the run last year. The offensive line was giving up sacks. They weren't getting a pass rush. It was everything. For Nebraska, giving them all kinds of issues. But it'll be interesting to see how this offense can develop. It's the left tackle. Remember, Teddy Prohaska. This is a guy that was injured all of last season. You look at his ability to be back now healthy, should help stabilize at least that side of the O-line coming into this new season. There's some decent weapons that he's got to work with. It'll be interesting. Marcus Washington, and Xavier Betts are going to be relied upon at receiver for this Nebraska Cornhuskers team. Now, the defense does have some new faces, but I do like that they bring back a lot of linebacker, and the secondary is probably the strength of Nebraska's defense, I should say. Secondary brings back a lot from last year. Minnesota, on the flip side, as much as, I don't know if it's going to be right away that things are going to click for Nebraska. I ain't ready to lay more than a touchdown with Minnesota. This has never been a juggernaut offense. And look, a lot of the people that follow the Gophers program and cover them regularly say they think this Greek stallion that they've got at quarterback, Kaliakmanis, has a better arm and a stronger arm than Tanner Morgan. And there might be some truth to that because it's not like Tanner Morgan ever was a big-time vertical passing quarterback when he was at Minnesota. But I got to see it still before I believe it. Keep in mind they've had some good running backs and a strong run game in years past. I'm not so sure it's going to be quite as good this year. It'll be interesting to see Sean Tyler, Zach Evans, if guys like that can step up in the run game for some of these awesome running backs they've had previously. At least they have Chris Ottman-Bell healthy at receiver. That's big. This is a guy that's a pretty good receiver when he's healthy. He battled injury last year for Minnesota. But when it's all said and done, this is definitely going to be a ball control offense, methodical drives. Still got to see if Kaliakmanis is the real deal in terms of being able to have that strong arm that some people think he has. I'm not ready to lay 7.5. I'm not rushing to take Nebraska either, but given the choice, certainly lean to the dog here, the Huskers, as long as you're getting north of 7 in this game. And certainly could only play this game under the total, as far as totals go. I know it's a low one at 43.5, but there's a reason the total is that low. What do you think here, Conor? Nebraska, Minnesota in this Big Ten opener.
Yeah, Big Ten ugly game. Let me hit up the chat because I don't have a ton on this game. Brett Kenny, newest member. Appreciate it, my guy. Become a member, $4.99. That's it. And we might be doing even more shows, that have that. We already have a few. The NFL show will be with Jimmy and Jose. We got the UFC on Tuesday nights. We'll have a few more and some other stuff for members. Galactic High, my dude. King Cards, Rants, Justin, Real Deal Prime, The Grinder, Trans, Canada, my dude, Wine Time, Rants, Harold Williams, Jay Smooth. Shout out to all you guys. Jake Kaiser. Speaking of Nebraska, the guy, there he is. Jake Kaiser, my guy. But like you talked about, I'm on the under, the 6.5 wins. I don't think they win 7. I think there's a lot of hype here for Nebraska. I thought the hire was good. I think Matt Rule is a college coach the rest of his life. He tried the NFL thing like a ton of these guys do. It didn't work out. Can Jeff Sims at QB, be okay here? I'm not so sure. The offensive line has problems. And that defense is just so far gone from those old days, black shirts. It's just not very good. Minnesota has owned them the last few years. But this line, like you mentioned here, Bavano, over a touchdown, I don't want to run and lay it either. With Minnesota, we know they're going to run it. The defense was very good, 4th in all the country, only gave up 13.8 points. But they lost a few guys here, a few guys in the secondary to the NFL. But can Nebraska take advantage of that? I'm not so sure. this total's low. Maybe there's points, but I'd still look at the under, in this one too.
There's something to be said about the experience that Jeff Sims brings at quarterback for Nebraska, but it's kind of inconsistent, erratic, mediocre experience, injury-riddled experience as well, because this guy's never been able to stay healthy either. So, but he is experienced, and you're right about the Minnesota secondary. Nebraska's got the better secondary, believe it or not, coming into this game. But you got quarterbacks on either side. Can they exploit the issues? Well, can Kaliakmana step up for Minnesota? Can Jeff Sims take advantage of a weaker Minnesota secondary? The way I see it is Kaliakmana still struggled with interceptions when he played. Whenever Morgan didn't play, because Morgan was banged up for a small period of last year, Kaliakmana still threw some bad interceptions, bad decisions. And Nebraska's strength is their secondary on defense. So I think they might be able to force a mistake or two. Keep in mind, too, you think, well, this Nebraska team's been awful. They've been crushed on the road in Big Ten play in years past. Maybe they're not getting enough points here, 7.5. I wouldn't underestimate just how poorly coached and just everything about Nebraska the last few years. And I was shocked that this team just consistently ill-prepared to play football under Scott Frost. The turnovers that they committed, the penalties they committed, it was just horrendous. And if I'm a guy like our good pal Jake Kaiser in the chat here, I'm ripping my hair out watching this team play the last few years. Just the mistakes, the self-inflicted fucking wounds over and over again, week after week, turnovers and penalties. And that killed them every bit as much as their play on the field. And I think just having Matt Rule there is going to eradicate a lot of those issues. I think he's going to clean up the turnovers with this team. He's going to clean up the penalties, the undisciplined play. I think that is something Matt Rule will fix with this team.
Yeah, hey, they're catching a touchdown.
Yeah.
This seems like we're years past. It would be like a pick 'em or something like that where you could look to Minnesota. You're getting 7.5, so I can't wait to watch.
It is. Yeah. Nebraska's losing battles. And like, if you look at 247 Sports, that's the site that's my go-to for checking the recruiting rankings. Yeah, it's rough for Nebraska. And that's going to be the issue. Not so much here. Like, I think to me, they can hang with a team like Minnesota. But when you're going to play Penn State and you're going to play Wisconsin and you're going to play Ohio State, Michigan, obviously, that's where it's going to show up. You're just totally outmanned and overmatched. But I don't think that's necessarily going to be the case here. All right, next up, we've got Florida and Utah. Utah 6.5-point favorites in this one, and the total 45.5 across the board. Utes and Gators. This line opened as high as 10 with Utah as a home favorite in the summer, and then it dropped all the way down, to 4.5 I would say about a week ago, several days ago, when it looked like Cam Rising, the great quarterback for Utah, was for sure going to be out. But now people have heard the Cam Rising statement and interview the other day saying, I'm going to do everything I can to play and be on the field for this game against Florida. So now the line's gone back up to 6.5. Let me put it this way, and I want to be crystal clear on my stance on this game. They could put Conor Mack and yours truly at quarterback for Utah. There is no way that even at plus 6.5 that I'm going to trust Graham Mertz, the Wisconsin transfer at quarterback, on the road in a nighttime environment against this kind of team and this kind of defense. There's just no way. That's not happening. Okay? So by default, this is Utah or pass for me in this game. I don't think I'm going to lay the points with Utah because we did see them struggle a little bit in the trenches with Florida when they played in Gainesville last year. Gators had their way along the line of scrimmage more than I thought they would. And their defense could be pretty decent, but I think this offense for Florida definitely is a work in progress. It wasn't great last year under a much more athletic quarterback like Anthony Richardson, who is more of a run threat and not so great in terms of the consistency throwing the ball. But now you got Graham Mertz, and look, the O-line's got question marks. I don't know if the skill position talent is where it's been in years past for Florida. You're on against a really good defense on the road in your first game of the season. And we saw what this guy did at Wisconsin. Bad decisions, noodle arm at times throwing the football, and just horrible interceptions. Awful in some of these games for Wisconsin. Yeah, I got to see it before I believe it with Mertz against still a very good defense on the road in the first game. So haven't bet it yet. I probably won't bet the game. It's probably going to be a pass, but lean Utah, probably lean under the total. But I'm sure the under's already been hit. I know it has, yes, because it opened 50.5, and it's all the way down to 46 now in this one. What do you think here, Connor? A rematch of last year, Florida-Utah.
Yeah, the total has been hit, and I don't think I'm gonna mess with the total. I'll wait on that later in the week. Yeah, rematch from last year was on Florida. Now we flip it. Yeah, Graham Mertz at QB. They think, and I want to see it. The strength will be this Florida defense. But I always talk about, you mentioned at night, day or night, Salt Lake City. I'm not betting against Utah, flat out. And it's under. Yep. Yes. Oh yeah. If you watched any of this show, they hit the road. It's different, but here at home, they're really, really good. 14 starters. It looks like Rising is in. They got a strong defense. I think their defensive line is really, really good and should match up against Florida. Yeah, and I think the offense of Florida will take some time. And Florida has just been bad on the road the last few years. 3-9 ATS, non-SEC games. Touch on the total. Just they've gone over in a ton of their road games too. Have the Gators, but I didn't want to mess with that either. Utah, that even though that defense, they kind of played to some overs last year as well with Rising, but I can't get there on the total. But it's a lean for me here under the touchdown. You know me, Utah or nothing.
I agree with that, definitely. Utah or nothing for me in this one. Let's go to Friday. We've got Miami, Ohio, and Miami. Yes, this is Miami versus Miami. We don't get to see this hardly ever. But yeah, the MAC, Miami, Ohio, and the ACC, Miami, of course, Hurricanes, the U. Miami, 17-point favorites, 45 the total in this one. I grabbed a little small, not a big bet here, not a strong stance for me necessarily, but I did grab a little plus 17 here with the Red Hawks with Miami O. I think Miami O could have a really good defense. Now, the question is always going to be, can they match up physically and athletically, in the trenches, down the field and pass coverage against a team like Miami, where you assume they have the superior recruits, they have the superior athletes, no question about that. But you look at this Miami team, it was a complete and utter flop last year. For this team. It was a disastrous season. There's no way to sugarcoat it. They were supposed to be a whole lot better talent-wise than they ended up being. I'm not sold on this head coach, Cristobal. Simple as that. To me, Oregon won in spite of him, not because of him. And when I look at Miami, I've still got to see it from their quarterback here, Tyler Van Dyke, who, by the way, I should point out, limited in practice with the thumb injury. He hurt the thumb on his throwing hand in practice, and he's been limited. Now, I'm not saying he probably is still going to play, I would think. This game's not till Friday night, but be careful. Tyler Van Dyke is battling that thumb injury right now, which means we're looking at either Ja'Curry Brown or Emory Williams would have to step in as the starting quarterback here Friday night for the Hurricanes in this game. Miami O, I think, is going to be able to play solid defense. And keep in mind, this team lost Brett Gabbert, their quarterback, last year to injury. Avion Smith had to take over, and he actually played all right. But now they got everybody at their disposal. They've got Brett Gabbert, who's the better pocket passer, the better throwing quarterback, and you've got Avion Smith, who's more of an athletic, running quarterback. So now I think what they want to do here and what they're hinting at, Chuck Martin here, who's been the head coach here for a decade, is that maybe do a little of everything here. Use both quarterbacks, keep the defense off balance. We know Avion Smith is the better athletic quarterback. We know Gabbert's the better throwing quarterback. Maybe pose some problems here for, let's be real, a Miami defense that obviously was just brutal last year. A big part of why this team just had such a disappointing season considering what they brought in last year as far as talent is concerned. So, it's one of those show me games, Connor Mack. Show me that you're ready to be better. Show me you're ready to tell me and prove to me that last year was an anomaly. And not only do you have to show me that, you got to win this game and win this game by upwards of 3 touchdowns against a Miami O team that I think is going to be in the mix to win the MAC East Division personally this year. So I did grab 17. Again, you're always concerned with MAC versus a Power 5 school. Can they match up and hang in there for 4 quarters? But we saw what Hawaii did, at Vanderbilt on Saturday. They hung tough for 4 quarters, covered a number close to this. I think it's just a little too many points to ask for the Hurricanes here. What do you think, Connor? Battle of Miami.
Yeah, and one thing that's keeping me, as I like the dog here, is Miami usually is is good early on, especially the last few years, like the first few weeks of the year before it blows up, and they were horrible, like they were last year. So that's got me. That it was kind of like last week that kept me off Navy in the end, was just how bad they've been in week ones the last 5 years, and they just got their ass kicked again. But I like Miami, Ohio. You mentioned Gabbert's back. That season he had 2 years ago in 21 was very good. 2,600 yards, 26 TDs. He only had 6 picks. I think he's back in there. He's got a couple good wideouts here. The defense is where I think was going to help them out and why they'll be good in MAC play. Only gave up 22 points. They bring up 12 of their top 15 tacklers are back. So I think the defense will be pretty good. So I like the points there with them as well. Here we go. Tyler Van Dyke. I have seen so good out of him and then just horrible. You mentioned it. The offensive line is kind of going around, but they have some big names. It's a rebuild with some transfers. So we'll see how good the offensive line is. And we know they have the new offensive coordinator here, kind of that air raid offense he wants to play with Miami. I don't know if it works. They've been changing so much these last few years in this one. So, yes, I'm leaning the dog here pretty heavy with Miami, Ohio.
Well, that's another thing, too, that's concerning me about laying 17 with Miami. You said it. And it's not just the new OC, Shannon Dawson, the new DC, Lance Guidry. And Lance Guidry's actually a very good defensive coordinator. That's actually a really good hire. But you're still talking about new schemes, new systems, game one of the season. And you got to have that continuity and sharpness right away, with new systems and schemes on both sides of the football. That's asking a lot. When you do have continuity, obviously, with the Red Hawks. I mean, this is a coaching staff, head coach, DC, and OC that have been intact for a very long time.
That's true.
And very experienced quarterback room. So I think there's reasons to like Miami to hang inside a number like this.
And I wonder how that defense you talked about, Miami, how they're going to play. I think they have some holes. They have some very good players, obviously. Yeah. Talented and athletic. They got a great safety, a couple good safeties. Kitchens, that guy's really good. Yep. So can they keep Miami, Ohio down here? I'm leaning the dog with you here.
All right.
The other Miami.
The other Miami. You're right. And the total's been hit under because, look, Miami is definitely a defense-first team, Miami, Ohio. Miami Hurricanes, on offense last year, without Tyler Van Dyke's status now in question, I think that's probably also led to maybe some interest in the under here for this game. Central Michigan, Michigan State. We've got the Spartans, 14.5 point home favorites, 47 the total in this game. I think both of these teams are going to have pretty tough seasons, pretty rough seasons. And this is not really a ringing endorsement of Central Michigan, but just like the last game, I did take a small piece of the Chippewas here at 14.5. I don't know how good they're going to be. And Daniel Richardson, of course, is gone, pretty good quarterback. So Jim McElwain's been forced to look in another direction at the quarterback spot. Last I looked, it was going to be Jace Bauer and Bert Emanuel battling it out for that starting quarterback spot. For the Chippewas. But you look at this team, there's definitely some growing pains that they're going to go through this season. I actually think they're probably a bottom tier, bottom third of the MAC team this year. I know it was a rough season last year, but I just don't know how much of an improvement they're going to make with some question marks they have with the quarterback spot with Emmanuel and Bauer. Obviously, the receiving core is not bad. When I look at the team, though, in terms of the offensive line and how good it's going to be. The one thing they do have is they have 4 linemen with starting experience, which is going to help them for sure. So again, they allowed 31 sacks last year. That's just not really good, but you got to think with the experience that's returning, they got to be at least a little bit better. The defense was shredded last year. We know it wasn't really all that great. But when you look at it too, a lot of those players, with a little more experience, hopefully that helps them coming back. So they were a very young defense last year, but a lot of those players now, another year of experience should help. To me, this is just not so much, I really want to bet on Central Michigan. This is, I really want to bet against Michigan State. I mean, they lose Peyton Thorne. We know it was a tough year. Things are going after a great first season for Mel Tucker, as the head coach of Michigan State. It's been a steady decline ever since then. And the way I'm starting to think about this tenure here for Tucker is that he benefited from that COVID season, which just threw everything out of whack. That's when Michigan State played well. And since then, they've played worse and worse and worse. this program. And now they lose Peyton Thorne. He transfers to Auburn. So it's going to be a brand new quarterback here at the controls for Michigan State. Defense was absolutely ripped apart. We talked about how Central Michigan's defense last year wasn't great. Neither was Michigan State's, and there's some major question marks for them on that side of the ball. They've had some great running backs the last few years. Remember Kenneth Walker a couple years ago. So there's some turnover there at the running back spot. The O-line is a work in progress, in my opinion. Like I said, the defense was just not good last year. And sort of in-state little brother, big brother rivalry type game. These, like I say, maybe Michigan State, this is a game where Central Michigan's just so inferior athletically, speed, personnel, recruit, that Michigan State's still able to overwhelm them. But I'm going to dare them to, because I really don't think much of this Spartans team. And I know Central Michigan, if nothing else, they're going to be amped up to play the bigger brother in-state team. So not a ringing endorsement, but I did grab a 14.5 here, plus the points with the Chippewas. What do you think here, Conor? Central Michigan, Michigan State.
Yeah, one thing, Central Michigan, when you have these the little brother in Michigan they play up sometimes in some of these. They get up for them. One thing Central Michigan you talked about, and with Bauer, they're not going to be able to throw it well. All the sacks that he had. One thing you mentioned that I wanted to get to was that offensive line is back, and they were very good. 160 yards, led the MAC. They have to just pound the football here. And because on the flip side, Michigan State's defense, what do we get from them? They had 27 guys start the defense. Just with all the injuries and suspensions, they're just, I don't know what their defense is really going to look like this year. So we'll see. Will the talent just prevail? Maybe. I think it's too many points at 2 touchdowns in this one. And I don't know what we get from Noah Kemp. This guy's thrown 19 times in the last 3 years, basically 2-3 years.
Yep.
I mean, maybe he's playing here, Central Michigan. It'll make him look good in this first game. But I wanted nothing to do with this one.
Noah Kim, by the way, who's going to probably start at quarterback for Michigan State here, is a very athletic guy. Can run with the football. Definitely more of that from him you'll see probably than what we saw with Peyton Thorne. But no question. The question is going to be the arm talent a little bit, but certainly going to be able to run. And the question is, will that be enough for Michigan State at the quarterback spot after losing a guy, obviously, that was pretty solid for them in Peyton Thorne. Next up, Louisville, Georgia Tech. We've got Louisville 7.5-point, 8-point road favorites, and the total in this game currently 48.5 across the board. The total's been bet down. This is one where I'm probably going to stay off. I really think I like Louisville a lot this year. I look at them as a bet-on team. I like the hire of Jeff Brom. Jeff Brom's just a coach that I've made money with over the years, whether it was at Western Kentucky many years ago, whether it was at Purdue. We know Aiden O'Connell, who's right now lighting things up in the preseason for the Las Vegas Raiders in the NFL. Aiden O'Connell, look what Jeff Brom did with him. He just works well with quarterbacks, and I would expect more of the same here with him at Louisville. It's a good hire. The fact he got Purdue into bowl games and won bowl games at Purdue, that was an incredible accomplishment all by itself by Jeff Brom. They got to the Big Ten championship game one year under Jeff Brom at Purdue. So we know Brom can coach. There's no question. Brings in his son, former Louisville quarterback, Brian Brom, as his offensive coordinator. But the offense ain't going to be a change all that much. A chip off the old block. They're going to be a team that's going to look to throw the football. They were Jeff Brom's teams usually were very up-tempo. They've kind of scaled that back a little bit. He's kind of scaled that back a little bit the last few years. They haven't been playing with as much pace, as we saw in the Western Kentucky days or even early at Purdue. So it'll be interesting to see what kind of tempo they bring here coming into this season here for the Louisville Cardinals taking over this offense. And when you look, obviously, Jack Plummer is going to be the quarterback, and obviously someone Jeff Brom's very familiar with from their days at Purdue. So there's automatic, instant chemistry, instant cohesion, instant, that they know the system, they know the scheme. So that's huge for Louisville. They should be able to score points. And I think their defense, which, look, at times last year, a little hit or miss, defense really could be pretty solid this year for the Louisville Cardinals. And I think that the time was right to make a coaching change as far as I'm concerned. I think it was time to move on based on what we had seen last year from this Louisville team. And now, of course, they've done that. So interesting to see how it goes for Brom. So I am high on Louisville, but I am leaving the door open for Brent Key's Georgia Tech team to be better as well. Because, look, the bottom fell out the last few years. It's been a disaster. But when you look at what they're bringing back this year, I like that, the defense, I think, is ready to take some steps forward. We know they've had some issues on that side of the ball. They've had a very anemic passing game. And even the run game has been hit or miss, but it's usually either they can run the football or they don't move the ball at all. And I think I'm kind of willing to buy low here on Haynes King, the Texas A&M transfer. Didn't go well for him there, obviously, at College Station. But he comes to Georgia Tech, clean slate, fresh start. I think does help them a little bit here. So these are actually two teams I would rather look to bet on rather than bet against. So I find this game very difficult to bet, at least from a side perspective. We'll see how it goes. The total 49.5. They've been betting it under, and I get it. I think Georgia Tech's still going to be pretty much run heavy and sprinkle in the pass with Haynes King, methodical offense. I think Louisville can put up points. The question is, can Georgia Tech put up enough to go over the total? The more it drops, the more I'm interested in the over, but I'm not rushing to bet it. Let's put it that way. What do you think here, Connor? Louisville, Georgia Tech.
Yeah, here we go. And you know me and Babano. This Louisville team, betting on them has been problems for me. Man, we need a little Louisville change on our graphics here. When you guys say Jeff Brom here, what did you get from Plummer at quarterback? I mean, it was his best year last year at Cal that he had, but I still don't buy into it. And over a touchdown favorite here on the road in this game. The flip side, Georgia Tech. This is a team too. The last few years, they've been kind of got their ass kicked, and they've had 2 or 3 games where they come to life and play great, and against a better team. I don't know what we get from them. They definitely got some good transfers. Their portal on the defensive end, because that defense got gashed on the ground. They have like 190
yards. Has to
yards.
be better by default. Has to be. Yeah,
I think so. Yeah, just how bad they were. Louisville's got decent running backs, like you talked about, but on the flip side, Georgia Tech, Haynes King, I don't know, man. I got to see a little bit from him too, so I can't put my money, as much as I kind of want to be on the dog here with Georgia Tech. In the end, I'm just going to stay off. Both these teams finished good against the number towards the end of the year too, as they were horrible early on.
Great. I like Louisville a lot. I'm not betting against Louisville right now, especially in this spot, but I also wouldn't be surprised if there's some sneaky improvement from Georgia Tech this season. But again, that remains to be seen. All right, next up, final game for Friday night, Stanford and Hawaii. Of course, one of these teams already has a game under their belt, the Hawaii Warriors, who played like Warriors last week at Vandy, given the Commodores everything they could handle. Stanford is now just a 3.5-point road favorite on the island after this game opened at 10.5 months ago. So it has been a deluge of money on Hawaii, and even more since that game on Saturday between Hawaii and Vanderbilt, because when that game kicked off, the number was around 7.5. With Stanford as a road favorite. And people saw that Hawaii team just give Vanderbilt everything they could handle. And now look at this number down to 3.5. And I fully agree. But the problem is I have a 7.5 in my pocket. I didn't even get the 10.5. I didn't get the best number, but I got in at 7.5. I loved Hawaii in this spot. And I said that last week on the show. And even though I cashed a ticket with Hawaii against Vanderbilt, I like this spot, this matchup even more. Problem is, so much of the value is gone. It's down to 3.5. That being said, there's nothing that could get me to take Stanford here. Really, I think it's a complete rebuild for Stanford coming into this season. When you look at it, tough times for this program. The offense was just dreadful, and the defense was probably even worse last year. They've got Justin Lamson, projected to be the new starting quarterback for this Stanford team. I don't love their skill position group. They've got all kinds of issues on the offensive line. And, of course, we know this defense was absolutely ripped to shreds last year. So it definitely looks to me like this is going to be a team that's kind of rebuilding and looking toward the future a little bit. Keep in mind there's just so many changes that this program has to deal with. and that's not going to make it easy here, especially when you consider and factor in the travel that Stanford's going to be going through for this game. And it's just a huge job. It's Troy Taylor, a new head coach. It's brand new coordinators, system changes. It's just a deluge. The team obviously had some transfer departures, including their quarterback, Tanner McKee. It's just kind of a program that I expect Stanford probably to be the worst team in the Pac-12 this season. It's just they're starting from scratch. Hawaii has shown they can compete. Last week they did on the road against bottom tier, below average Power 5 schools. We saw enough out of Shager on offense. We saw enough of the defense is still sketchy for Hawaii, but Timmy Chang has the defense playing hard, hanging in there, getting key stops. That's what they were able to do against Vanderbilt to keep them in that game. And if they could do that on the road at Vandy, I imagine they can do it here at home against a Stanford team that I don't think is even as good as Vandy, in my opinion. So I totally agree with the move. It's just a question of, do you want to bet Hawaii now at plus 3.5 when you could have had 10.5 or even 7.5 last week? What do you think here, Con?
Yeah, that is the shitty thing here. But I still think you do. I still think you take the 4 or 3.5 with Hawaii. And Stanford, Troy Taylor was really good, Sacramento. And I think maybe he could do all right. 3 games last year, basically the worst Stanford football team in a long time. They definitely need to change. They have a tough schedule. They need to beat Hawaii to win 3 or 4 games, win 4 games maybe. And I think this one could be close. You mentioned the Hawaii defense. I still think has issues. I think we get some points in this game, whether it gets over. I think it's close. I wish it was a few lower in this one. But you mentioned Shager. I thought he threw it around a little bit on Vandy. And where you want Hawaii is on the island where weird shit goes down. Flags fly, wind blows, just crazy fumbles start happening. So I'm with you here. Even down or still over the field goal, I'm leaning Hawaii.
All right, we're both leaning Hawaii. 11 p.m. Eastern, 8 p.m. Pacific on Friday night. That'll be a fun one to watch. All right, before we get into the Saturday slate, let's do some business here. We want to remind you about the Pub Sports Radio poker tournament. We've been running these regularly here with Pub Sports Radio. Make sure you get involved with that. And, of course, as well, and I'll be involved in it again, the Cappers contest, man. Right around the corner. It's basically a week away. NFL Week 1 is going to be next Thursday. We can't wait. I'll be entering that. I'll be filing my entry probably by the end of this week. There it is, the 2023 Pub Sports Radio Cappers Contest. And there is our smiling defending champion, Peter Loshak. Did an outstanding job last year winning this event, winning this tournament. $100 entry fee. You make 5 NFL picks against the spread each and every week. Sign up now at pubsportsradio.com. 1 entry per person. And, of course, you must be 18 years of age or older to enter. Make sure you get involved, the Cappers contest, and of course, as well, the Survivor contest. Sign up for that as well, pubsportsradio.com. $100 entry fee, just like the Cappers contest, 1 entry per person and 18 years of age or older to enter. Make sure you get involved. Poker tournament, Pub Sports Radio Cappers contest, and the Survivor contest, all things you should be involved in. Check it out, pubsportsradio.com. Saturday, let's go. Texas State, Baylor. We've got Baylor here, 26.5, 27-point home favorites, 62.5 the total. This total has actually been bet up, and I agree with it. I was actually really surprised that at one time this total was bouncing around in the 57, 58 range. I thought it was a little bit low. This Texas State team, keep in mind the changes we're going to see with the Bobcats this year here for Texas State. G.J. Kinney, head coach, Mac Leftwich, the offensive coordinator here for Texas State coming into this season. And this team is really going to ramp up tempo this year under the new offensive coordinator. And that's exactly why when I first saw this total, I'm like, man, that looks pretty low with the total here, considering the kind of changes we're going to see here from this Texas State offense. Keep in mind, Mac Leftwich was the OC at Incarnate Word last year, an FCS program. And if you know anything about Incarnate Word on offense, lightning fast pace and tempo. really, really try to speed things up. And I think you're going to see that here, bringing that kind of style offensively, you would think, because that's what Mac Leftwich ran offensively at Incarnate Word. He's probably going to bring that exact same style to Texas State. Question is, how many points are they going to put up with that offense? And even if they struggle a bit on offense, it's probably going to give Baylor more opportunities to score in this game. And look, I think Blake Shapen was kind of a disappointment last year. I'll be real, because I thought coming into last year he was going to have a really good season for the Baylor Bears, and it was just kind of mediocre, kind of erratic. Now, he did have some O-line issues last year. That O-line was never spectacular. But he's now got a full season starting under his belt. I think he's got to be better. I think the O-line's in a little bit of a better position to be able to score points this year. You know, what was surprising about Baylor last year, Connor, is considering their head coach is a defensive-minded head coach, Dave Aranda, just to see how bad that defense was last year and how much worse it got. You know, I got to see that defense improve. To me, there's still a lot of question marks with the Bears on that side of the football. So put it all together, and I agree with the total going up. The question is now, it was 57-58. It's as high as 62 right now. You still want to bet it over the total, but I did grab over 50. I think I got 59.5. I didn't even get the best number, but I got 59.5, and it's certainly better than what you see out there now. But I still think you're going to see points in this game. What do you think, C-Mac, Texas State, Baylor?
Yeah, there should be points, but can it get over? I have a little of a problem. What is Texas State? I mean, who's going to play quarterback? They're just going to go with whoever? Because I haven't heard nothing that.
Yeah, a lot of these teams, keep in mind, when you don't hear anything this close to the first game of the season, usually means that there's uncertainty. They don't know who's going to win the job. And right now, it's still murky. It's still very, very up in the air. Last I heard, Malik Hornsby and TJ Finley. And keep in mind, too, TJ Finley's one of these quarterbacks. He's been around the block, man. NC State, Louisville, or NC State, LSU, Auburn. I mean, this guy's been everywhere the last few years as a quarterback in college football. So now he's ended up at Texas State, and not NC State, rather, just LSU and Auburn. And now he's here at Texas State. And keep in mind, even though he's coming from pedigree schools in the SEC, LSU and Auburn, this guy is still in a battle to win the job, which tells you all you need to know. You know, there's uncertainty with who's going to be in there.
Yeah, so that I have just questions there, because that Baylor defense was very good. You know, in their last 10, I think 8 of the 10 went over. You talked about, can they be better? I think Shapen's all right. I think they're going to score a bunch of points here in this game. The one key I have here is with Texas State defense that I don't think is very good, but they bring a bunch of guys back. They think they might be better, you know, and I'm not so sure. That's something I got to see. This is a boatload of points, but I don't know if I can trust Texas State. I lean them and the points, and I think there will be plenty of points. I do lean over.
Yeah, to me, the difference is minimal. Finley was okay, but never great. Hornsby produces some upside, I think, but both of them have starting experience. Hornsby at Arkansas, and of course, we've seen Finley a handful of times with LSU and Auburn in recent years. So he got experience at least. Both guys are experienced at the quarterback spot, regardless of who they go with, Texas State. So I do think they're capable of putting out, and Baylor should be able to pile up the points, because Texas State defense here probably going to be in trouble, and I'm not sure they're going to be a very good team on that side of the football this year. All right, next up, East Carolina and Michigan. Michigan 36-point favorites here at home in the Big House, 51.5 the total. Oh, that noble Jim Harbaugh, man. Falling on his sword and signing up for that 3-game suspension, because surely this team can't win without him when you're playing East Carolina, UNLV, and Bowling Green in the first 3 games of the season. I mean, you could put a fucking headset on me or Connor Mack on the sideline and just stand there like a couple of dopes as the acting head coach, and we'd be able to beat East Carolina, UNLV, and Bowling Green in the first 3 games of the season. So it's not like he's doing something that's, really, really, what a gesture, what a great act of selflessness here by Jim Harbaugh to have this self-imposed 3-game suspension to begin the season. Look at your opponents, man. Like I said, you could have a broomstick on the sideline as a head coach. They'd still win the damn football game, and probably by margin. So let's not go overboard with the praise for Harbaugh doing such a great gesture here. The bottom line is they also get an opponent here in East Carolina that's totally rebuilding. Holton Naylor's gone. New quarterback. lot of departures from both sides of the football for East Carolina. And it's unfortunate because I like their coach. I like Mike Houston quite a bit. He's done a nice job. It was a nice season they had last year. But when you look at it, he's got his work cut out for him. The offensive line is completely dilapidated, depleted from last year. They have a brand new starting quarterback now. And you look at, and by the way, don't underestimate the loss of this Mitchell kid at running back, who is just absolutely phenomenal for East Carolina, really carried them on offense at times last year as well. And now he's gone too, Keaton Mitchell. So that's a huge hole to fill if you're East Carolina in this game. I mean, this is a pass for me, Connor. I'm not going to go overboard. Like, obviously, we know with Michigan, J.J. McCarthy back at quarterback. They've got the run-pass balance to really pick apart, an East Carolina, team that's lost a lot on the defensive side of the football. I was never a huge fan of Holton Ahlers. Like, he had his, inconsistencies. And Mason Garcia, let's see what he's able to bring, at the quarterback spot here for East Carolina this year. But it's a tough ask in the opener. That being said, 36 is a lot of points. And it's too many for me to be wanting to lay that with Michigan. So, and I don't trust East Carolina enough to take the points. And the one thing we've seen from Harbaugh, and I'm sure he'll tell the acting coaching staff that even though he won't be there, is if we got a chance to punch in an extra touchdown, we'll do it. He's done it in the past. Michigan's done it in the past. And there's a chance they might do that here again in this one. What do you think here, Connor? East Carolina, Michigan.
Yeah, Ayler's gone. I did like him in certain spots, especially if he was a dog. He usually came to play double digits. But as soon as he is a favorite, last year even at Eastern Michigan, they didn't get it done. Yeah, what can we get? Garcia. They have Johnson and wide receiver. That's pretty good. Tight end Calhoun. You mentioned Mitchell gone, the good running back. They still all right. The Harris is all right. Gunn, I think they'll be okay. This is huge. They probably get beat up here, but I think it's just a ton of points. So I can't lay with Michigan. What do we get? Sometimes these schools, they come out red hot, blow them out, or they struggle. This is the first game, and you automatically go and want to take this first half. I think Michigan just lay it. I need to see it. But Michigan should be fine. You mentioned Harbaugh not there. It doesn't matter.
And then Earl Sports Bets, yeah, he, of course, East Carolina student himself, attends ECU with some thoughts on his team. Lost a lot of.
Yeah, I think Harrison Gunn. Solid, yeah.
Yeah, exactly. And there's a chance that can he do what Keaton Mitchell did is the question. But you're right, the running back spot is not as starting over as the quarterback and the O-line and the receiving core. I mean, it's going to be an interesting go of it here for East Carolina, and obviously this is a pretty tough draw here, their first game of the season. All right, Arkansas State, Oklahoma. Oklahoma 35-point home favorites, 57.5, 58 being the total in this game. The money's come in on the under. I think I agree with that. This is another team where that defense can't be worse. Oklahoma cannot be worse on defense than last year. And I couldn't believe how bad it was, because Brent Venables, who did an outstanding job his entire tenure as Clemson's defensive coordinator, and to see Oklahoma just totally out of position, breakdowns in the secondary, couldn't stop the run. It's like, this is Brent Venables as their head coach, and somehow this defense is playing like this. But I got to imagine it's going to be an improved defense this year. From everything I'm reading in camp, it looks like there's going to be some better things on the horizon here for Oklahoma on the defensive side of the football coming into this season. I think it's very important to note that, they had big issues with depth last year, and they couldn't get any pressure on the quarterback. That ended up being a problem. But, every major defensive impact starter from last year is back. They got some decent ads in the transfer portal as well to help out this defense as well. So like I said, there's just too many indicators that point to, this defense has to be better. This defense has to improve this year. And I think not only will they improve a little bit because things were so bad last year. 30 points per game, 119th in terms of passing yardage per game, 106 in the country, rushing yardage per game. It's going to be better, and it potentially could be a lot better here for Oklahoma. On the offensive side of the football coming into this season, obviously, when you look at it, they obviously had issues last year in terms of keeping their quarterback healthy. throughout the course of last year. But Dylan Gabriel's back. The UCF transfer will be his second year now in the program. A lot, at times last year, a little erratic, couple of, interceptions he'd want to have back. But I definitely think that offense is still going to be something to be weary of. They've got Javonte Barnes, Marcus Major in the backfield, Jaleel Farouk, and Andrell Anthony leading them at receiver. They've got that good tight end. He's been there for a while now too, Austin Stogner. So, they're going to have definitely a lot of weapons on offense with a much improved defense. I think this is an opportunity for Oklahoma to probably run it up against an Arkansas State team that, look, not one of my favorite coaches, and that's putting it mildly. I've never been a big fan since his days early on in I think it was one of those MAC schools a long time ago. I think it was Central Michigan for Butch Jones, but just never thrilled with what he's done at other stops. Tennessee never did a thing with him at head coach. Arkansas State has kind of went backward in the wrong direction under his tutelage. Coming into this season, and I'm not sure things are going to get markedly better. There's a horrendous defensive team last year, Arkansas State. That's bad news. Here's another guy that keeps transferring from one worse program to another, Tennessee to Colorado. Now here he is at Arkansas State, JT Shrout, and I've seen enough JT Shrout to know I'm not impressed with what I see. So I haven't laid the points, but I'm tempted. This is one favorite I'm mildly interested in. Oklahoma here, and lean under as well. What do you think, Conor?
Well, good luck. Unless Oklahoma is turning around on defense. One thing, laying points with Oklahoma, the favorite the last few years, not been profitable at all. They might have got you I'd have to look that up, but they have been awful laying a number like this. But they should beat down this Arkansas State team. Won 3 games last year and they don't bring anything back, really. They're just, and the quarterback that was there, Blackman, for a few years, he's gone. What can they do? This seems like a good spot for Oklahoma defense that I don't know has changed much, but can look pretty good maybe in this game. So I get it. And Arkansas State, it seems like if they can score 14 points or more, this game goes over. Because, Oklahoma should get theirs. You could look to their team total maybe in this game, but I won't be on it.
All right, Ohio State, Indiana, Big Ten. This is, by the way, the first Big Ten game on CBS as the new Big Ten television rights deal goes into effect. You're going to see Big Ten games on CBS. You're going to see NBC Saturday night Big Ten this season. So a new era for the Big Ten, and this is on CBS on Saturday with their number one crew of Nestler and Danielson calling this game. Ohio State, Indiana. We've got obviously Ohio State big favorites here, 29-point road favorites, 59 being the total in this game. This is just handicapping 101 for me. Can Ohio State win and cover? Yeah. They're a lot better than Indiana. We know that. Both sides of the football. But handicapping 101 to me, Connor Mack says, I don't feel comfortable laying over 4 touchdowns on the road with a brand new starting quarterback. I just don't, especially when you're coming off having a guy like C.J. Stroud, who's had obviously a nice career at Ohio State, was named the Houston Texans starting quarterback after last night's preseason finale for them. And now, of course, and from what I've seen, for Ryan Day, it's been down to the wire here between Kyle McCord and Devin Brown, as far as his quarterback competition is concerned. And that tells me no one's really stood out enough to just grab hold of the job. I think it's probably going to be Kyle McCord, but, are we 100% sure of that at the moment? That remains to be seen. So there's some doubts there. You look at Ohio State, they were supposed to be improved on defense, and early in the season last year they were, but that defense kind of fell apart when they faced some really, really good offensive teams. But when you look at it, I still like Jim Knowles a lot at the DC. And when you look at this defense, I definitely think there's going to be some improvement there. Whereas on the offensive side of the football, it'll be interesting to see what they get as far as the quarterback competition is concerned. So I'm a little hesitant for sure to lay, more than 4 touchdowns here with Ohio State. But on the flip side, we saw Indiana was just absolutely dreadful throughout the course of last season. It's definitely Tom Allen hot seat year for Indiana. He's going to have to show some definite improvement from this program, or it's probably going to be his last year at the as head coach of this program. It looks like now that, again, another team where there's been a battle ongoing for the quarterback spot between Brendan Sorsby and Taven Jackson. We'll have to see how that pans out. But, you look at Indiana, it's got to start. First of all, it's got to start on the defensive side of the football. They weren't very good on either side of the ball last year. Offense struggled to score points, but the defense was absolutely atrocious last year. The O-line has been a consistent problem over the years for Indiana. Last year it was especially porous in pass protection. They brought in a new OL coach, Bob Bostad, to try to boost that offensive line, get it better. They do have Cam Camper back at receiver. We'll see how he fares. But to me, you look at that, it's got to start with the defense as well. Allen's a defensive-minded head coach, and it's going to have to start there on the defensive side of the football. And that was an area that was just absolutely gutted. But the good news is they brought in some good transfers on the D-line that should help. They've got more depth there along the defensive front and should be able to generate a little bit more pressure. But, again, first game of the season against, one of the teams that could win the Big Ten. I want to see it before I believe it. I'm probably not going to have a bet on this game, side or total, but an interesting one to break down. I just think there's a lot. I mean, I wish I had more faith in Indiana because part of me wants to kind of take Indiana plus 29.5, but don't know if I'm really ready to trust this group in the first game in a tough matchup like this. What do you think here, C-Mac?
Yeah, Indiana, what are we going to get? And who's going to start at quarterback? The problem last year was they can't score. And can they score on this Ohio State team? Because you mentioned Stroud gone now. It doesn't matter. And they were loaded at receiver, running back. Ohio State should get what they want. Because Indiana, I think, got worse defensively the last few years. It's just been a mess with this program. I can't take them. This was a quick pass for me. Ohio State should win. It's just, do they cover?
You know what? I kind of see why the total has gone up because I still think Ohio State's probably going to score a lot of points, even with the quarterback uncertainty. Lean over, but I just don't know what you're going to get from India. Keep in mind, it was fit. Now, this was C.J. Stroud last year. Let's remember that. But it was 56-14 last year for Ohio State, 70 points in the game. I think it's got a chance to get to the 60s. So, I still lean over with this game, but not sure I'll bet either one. At this point in time, side or total. Next up, we've got Fresno State and Purdue in the next matchup here. We've got Purdue 3.5 to 4 point home favorites, 47.5, 48 the total. I don't love this game, really. It's bet against versus bet against. I'm not thrilled about betting Purdue right now. Jeff Brom goes to Louisville, their former head coach, and you look at the changes now that this program's going under. Of course, Aiden O'Connell gone as well, so new coach, new quarterback, new systems. That's not necessarily bet on material, especially when you're laying points in your season opener. But Fresno, I'm telling you what, I watched Fresno a lot last year. C-Mac, I'm sure you did. You're out west, Mountain West. You see a lot of them. Jake Haener was the lifeblood of that football team. Jake Haener played. They were one of the better teams in the Mountain West and one of the better group of 5 schools in the entire country. When Jake Haener didn't play and he had that injury through a part of last season, that team couldn't even move the ball a lick on offense. That's how big the downgrade was. And now you lose, I think, a quarterback that doesn't come around every day for a group of 5 program in Jake Haener, who's now in the NFL. And I just don't know if Fresno State's going to be able to get that same quarterback production this year with Mikey Keene, our guy, who's I'm never really that enamored with going back to UCF. I never thought he lit it up. There's a reason why he's now with Fresno State, another program. I think the under is probably a decent bet because you would think your Purdue is going to be a little bit more balanced between the run and the pass compared to Jeff Brom being there as the head coach. I've got questions about Fresno State's offense. I have questions about the defense too, but to me, Fresno kind of comes into this season where I have more questions about their offense than their defense. So I think this could be a low-scoring game. As far as the side goes, I'd rather bet against both of these teams right now. So I'm passing. What do you think here, Conor?
Yeah, I didn't love this game at all because I don't know what we get. I thought Fresno's defense, at least in Mountain West play, was pretty good. At times, you mentioned Keenan, quarterback. Yeah, I don't know how much he gives here. He wasn't great. He's just not a great throwing the football. It's just period. He'll run it. And Purdue, turnover there. What do we get? They are at home. They've always played better, but I can't lay more than a field goal here. And I thought their defense slipped a little bit with Purdue the last few years, but way better at home. I think the game could be close. I wanted more to be interested. I think getting a touchdown, maybe 6.5, 7 with Fresno.
They've taken a lot of money.
Yeah,
they've taken a lot of money, Fresno, in this game. So there's definitely some opinion in the market that Fresno State, maybe not so much that they've undervalued Fresno State. It's just that Purdue's really going to be falling on hard times after last year. And I don't think you can underestimate that. Now, I don't want to throw this the new head coach here for Purdue under the bus. I'm not saying Ryan Walters can't get the job done, but he's a first-year head coach, very young guy. New coordinators, to me, that's going to be work in progress. That screams work in progress to me. Not that you're ready to come out of the gate strong in your season opener. And I think and they're, at least from a Fresno standpoint, there's that coaching coordinator continuity, at least still for them coming into the season. So that's a interesting note to make here as far as this game is concerned. But, like I said, going to be interesting. Tedford, 5th year now. So that tells you all you need to know. Could be a little more continuity, at least on the Fresno side, and maybe the betting markets see that, even though, like I say, I'm worried about this team having to replace a guy like Jake Haener. Jake Haeners don't grow on trees for a program like Fresno State. It's just that simple. And replacing, and I saw enough of Mikey Keene last year to know that guy they can't walk in Jake Haener's shoes right now.
Yeah. Well, when he was in, that was, last year was kind of like when he was injured for that time. If he plays, it's a go for them. Purdue last year, too, which goes from year to year, but they had a ton of turnovers, that turned the football over. I think they had, I don't know what they were in the 120s. So they got to take care of the ball. New coach. This is the classic week one watch. Just, I don't want any of my money on either of these teams right now.
All right. How about the Battle of Kakalaki here? North Carolina, South Carolina. North Carolina, 2.5-point favorites, 64.5 the total in this game. Total's been hit up. Hey, it's a North Carolina game. We know what this team was last year. All offense, not a lick of defense from the North Carolina Tar Heels. And I think people still have that resonating in their minds when they look at a North Carolina game on the board. And so I think that's a huge piece of why this total's been bet up the way it has. And obviously, look, big Drake May fan. I do think their offense is going to be lethal, North Carolina. Drake May showed you what he could do last year at quarterback for the Tar Heels. And look, he was following some huge footsteps coming in, too, because Sam Howell was outstanding for North Carolina. He's got to replace him. And, of course, we're now going to see Sam Howell starting for an NFL team this year with Washington. And, he had to replace Sam Howell. And North Carolina has found that with Drake May. He is that good. They've got tons of weapons to work with once again this season. They've got, solid offense, solid offensive line once again. They're going to be able to score points. There's no question. Elijah Green, Amari and Hampton at running back, Devontae Walker, Nate McCollum at receiver, although Walker's questionable for this opening game. They're going to be fine offensively. The question is going to be on the defensive side of the football, where we know this is where this team had their fucking issues last year. And really, they've had their issues under Mac Brown every year since he's been the head coach there. And Gene Chizik, 4th year, I'm surprised he's still the DC there, because to be quite honest, this defense has been so bad at times that it's grounds for firing your defensive coordinator. And yet here we go again with Gene Chizik, still the defensive coordinator for this program. So until he's removed from his post, I don't know if I have confidence in this defense getting better. Now, look, the linebacking core is very experienced. The defensive line should – now, in terms of experience, they've got a lot more of it. But is it good experience? Because they weren't very good last year. That's the question. It's nice to have experience, but when you sucked last year, are you going to be able to take that step and improve? That ends up being the question. And look, for South Carolina on offense, it was a horrible first half. And then Spencer Rattler turned into like a Tom Brady or something down the stretch of last year. What he did down the stretch was insane. I mean, he's just lighting up every defense he faced down the stretch of last season. It was a huge turnaround from Spencer Rattler leading that Gamecocks offense. To me, I think he can move the ball against this team, and I certainly think North Carolina, their offense, even against good defenses, can move the football. So I agree with this total moving the way it has up to the mid-60s. I could see points in this game for sure. I think North Carolina is a better football team entering the season personnel-wise than South Carolina, but we're still talking about we're laying points with a very highly questionable defense, highly suspect defense. I'm not sure I'm ready to do that. What do you think here, C-Mac?
Yeah, even a couple points, on the road, it just, it goes against a lot of my stuff. I bet, especially in football, college football, bad defenses laying points on the road. And they do. Drake May, he is very good. He lost a few, but they're loaded. They got tons of receivers. He has tons of weapons. I don't know how much changes. They got new OC too with Lindsey, but I think they just keep rolling there. The questions on the defensive side, and we've talked about pathetic this defense has been for North Carolina. And it kind of, they started out so great and fell apart. We were all talking about how they're kind of frauds. And I think what they lose their last 3 or 4 games last year. And what are we going to get from Rattler? I mean, this guy, put your money back in this guy. And, I don't know what we get. The guy who's just horrible. And then he had some crazy games late. There should be points, like you talked about. It's just, do we get over the mid-60s in this one? He had a lot of bad pressure, that offensive line, and I don't know if it's any better for South Carolina. He took a lot of sacks, and it doesn't look much. I don't know if it's better at all for South Carolina. They have a few good guys. Wells, they have a transfer tight end, Trey Knox, to help out. And maybe they have the better defense, but I don't know. I think it's South Carolina, on defense at times last year, got into some crazy shootouts. So I think we get plenty of points, and I'm just off the side here. This is not a game I want to get involved with.
I got to admit, I think it's, with all due respect to Mac Brown, I actually give a coaching advantage to South Carolina. And we saw this, and Shane Beamer, I like what I'm seeing now entering his 3rd season. They're good on special teams. They're very good kick returns and kick coverage. And so many of their games last year, they were boosted by special teams. And as you would expect, Frank Beamer was a special teams master. So it's not surprising to see the chip off the old block, the apple not fall far from the tree with the sun. Shane Beamer having a good special teams unit with South Carolina. So, and it makes up for, the offense and defense was hit or miss last year for South Carolina. But, coaching advantage when you have all summer to prepare for your opening game. What coaching staff do I want to trust? Mac Brown's staff or Shane Beamer's staff? I think I'm in the Beamer camp with that, quite honestly.
Yeah, I'm off.
All right, next up, Buffalo, Wisconsin. We got the Badgers, the new look Wisconsin Badgers. Wisconsin 27.5-point home favorites, 54 the total. A lot of love for Wisconsin. I'm hearing a lot of people thinking this team's going to be really good. They're by default with Paul Chryst gone and now Luke Fickell taking over. You've got a guy that's just a winner. We saw what he did at Cincinnati and winning culture he brings to the Badgers, to Madison, Wisconsin. I agree with all of that. I think it's a great hire. And I love that. And it may be one of the biggest quarterback upgrades from one season to the next. You go from Graham Mertz, who was just absolutely god-awful, pathetic, brutal, and you go from him to Tanner Mordecai, who transfers in from SMU, who has had a great career at SMU. Terrific thrower of the football. He's a little bit more athletic than some people think. I love a lot of what I've just said. Here's the issue, though. You recruited for years to be run-heavy, smash-mouth football team on the offensive side of the football. And now you're going to go to this air raid offense that they're going to try to bring in, throw it all around the field with Mordecai, which I think plays to his strength. But do you have the recruits? Do you have the personnel to execute that kind of offense early in the season when you recruited these big, huge offensive linemen for a run, smash mouth style of offense, run heavy for all these years? That's the big question I have with the Badgers. Can the scheme fit the personnel? Okay, that's the question. And Phil Longo, we just talked about North Carolina lost their offensive coordinator. It was Phil Longo, although Chip Lindsey taking over there. There's not going to be a huge change in the scheme. There is a huge change in the scheme. You're going to go from slow down, run-heavy offense to up-tempo, fast, more of a pass-heavy attack with Phil Longo, who's now the OC here at Wisconsin. So is the scheme going to fit the personnel this season? Eventually it will, because Fickell and Longo, they're going to bring in guys that are good quarterbacks, good pass-protecting linemen. better receivers, and do they have the receiving talent right now to go more heavy to the pass as well? Wisconsin, you got to ask yourself that. Is Chimere Dike, Will Pauling, Bryson Green, guys like that going to be able to make plays in the passing game here for Wisconsin? There's a question about whether it's going to work early, but they get a good opponent here because Buffalo defensively, I've got big issues with them. And more than anything, maybe jump on an over, which I did here in this game at 54, simply because, Wisconsin on defense last year took some steps back. And when you look at this Buffalo team on offense, one thing they are doing every year under Linguist, the coach, is they're balanced. They can run it. Their O-line's pretty solid. Cole Snyder is a very experienced quarterback for the Bulls. I do think Buffalo could punch in some scores, and Wisconsin with this new faster-paced, pass-heavy attack, maybe not something that's accounted for right away with their totals. So that's for that reason, that's why I bet over here, 54. Say jump on some Wisconsin overs, huge scheme change, much greater pace and tempo, take advantage of it right away. So that's the bet for me in this game. Nothing on the side, just to play toward over 54. What do you think here, C-Mac?
Yeah, maybe the total is a little bit too low in this one. I'm going to sit with it a little bit longer. You mentioned Cole. He's pretty good. Cole Snyder, quarterback. He had 18 touchdowns. And how good is this Wisconsin defense is the key, too. They have Cook in the backfield is solid. And Buffalo, I don't think their defense is very good, but they do bring a lot of pieces back. I don't know how much that's going to work out for them. But you mentioned Longo, the new offensive coordinator, should be very good. C.J. Wilson, they got these transfers, and I think he'll bring them in there, Fickle to Wisconsin, and really get this team good the next few years. This year, people are thinking they're going to just win 10 games out of the rip. I'm not so sure. And one thing with Mordecai, great quarterback. I don't know if he has that. We're going to find out that kind of, that dog in him. He just, I didn't see him win big games and really do big things, even though I think he has a big arm. So we'll see. But a game like this, I think there should be plenty of points. And another thing, I'm not going to lay it here with Wisconsin, but I just can't get on the other side either, so I'm off.
All right, Colorado, TCU. This is your big noon kickoff game on Fox on Saturday, noon Eastern. Gus and Joel, of course, on the call. They'll be doing 2 games for Fox this week, plus, as I said, the Thursday nighter with Nebraska and Minnesota. But we've got TCU 21-point favorites, 59.5. 59.5. It was 59.5 before the show earlier this morning. It's 64 now. Someone hammered the shit out of this total. And I agree. And that's the worst part. I didn't get on it. I thought 59, pretty low considering the situation. And next thing I look and turn around and look at 64. 5-point move pretty much in this 4.5-point move in this total. But look, TCU's offense, we know how explosive it was last year. And I know it was a Max Duggan offense last year. I get it. And Max Duggan was special. He was absolutely special as far as the quarterback position is concerned for Sonny Dykes. Absolutely outstanding. They do have a new OC, Kendall Briles, but they're going to keep the tempo the same. They're still going to play fast. They're going to look to throw the ball, and they've got a very experienced quarterback who's been around the block, was at Oklahoma earlier in his college career, was backing up. He just couldn't get in because Max Duggan was that good, and that's Chandler Morris taking over now as the starting quarterback for TCU. But he can play. He's a little undersized. He's got a good arm. He can run with the ball a little bit. TCU will be fine on offense, in my opinion, and be able to put up points. They're going to play fast. As for Colorado, of course, we know the headlines are Deion Sanders and all the talent he's brought in. First things first, if you're going to take Colorado here, you got to hope the chemistry and cohesion is there. I get it. They brought in so many new players. We're talking about 20 new faces on this Colorado team, and they're all talented. But are they all going to mesh well right away? On the road, tough opener, at TCU. That's the big question. One thing I can say about the offense for Colorado is they look loaded on that side of the ball. I mean, the O-line's solid. You look at Shadur Sanders, the son of Deion, who was a great quarterback at Jackson State. Deion brought him from Jackson State with him here to Colorado. And they've got weapons to work with a lot. that I think they're going to be able to move the football a little bit here in this game as well, even on the road. And they bring in Sean Lewis, the former Kent State head coach, as their new OC. And what do we remember the last few years for Colorado? Stagnant offense, non-existent, one of the worst offenses in college football, an extremely slow-paced offense. And now they're going to go from that to a much improved, at least in terms of talent and personnel on offense, and in terms of speed and tempo. What a huge difference from last year. They're going to go from extremely slow on offense to extremely fast, because we remember how Kent State, like a NASCAR speed offense when Sean Lewis was there. So they're going to go extremely fast. I'm so frustrated that this 59.5 was staring me in the face the last several days. I thought, I don't need to bet it right away. It's staying put. And then now it's up to 64. And I'm like, fuck, man, I just missed my chance at the good number. I still lean over. They've lost some value, but I do think there's reasons that people like over the total in this game. But someone really hammered it because it's gone up 4.5 points. I'm staying off the side. I mean, I know TCU on defense. I think there's some questions coming into the season. That's a lot of points. And Max Duggan was a special quarterback. That's no slight to Morris, but still an adjustment there. I think he'll be good. But again, a lot of hype for Colorado. The Deion's just going to come in. They're going to be this great team all of a sudden and a much improved team. I want to take a wait and see approach. I'm personally pumping the brakes. Let's see it in the first game of the season on the road against a pretty good TCU team that, let's remember, was in the playoff last year, college football playoff. So I'm pumping the brakes on the love and the hype for Colorado. I'm not laying the points either with TCU, but I'm pumping the brakes on Colorado. What do you think here, C-Mac?
Yeah, me too. This isn't the SWAC here, for Deion. Even though this is about to be, that's the Pac-12 no more. I think he could have some bad growing pains. But in this game, I think they could be around. TCU did lose a ton, especially on offense. You mentioned Morris, the new quarterback. They lost their top three. They got the running backs, the receivers. They did bring back a couple that are okay. And we saw them get into shootouts last year. So that's exactly why I think you saw this number move right away, that there's going to be points in this one. And how does his son Sanders do at quarterback here? 70 touchdowns the last couple of years at Jackson State. And I think they do have some weapons in this one. So I agree with you. It's not great. We've kind of missed the number, but I think there's points in this one. And I think TCU's better, wins at home, but no way do I want to lay 3 touchdowns with them. I think they're a football team that probably wins 7 games, 8 games. I think they take a step back in this one because I do like Sonny Dykes as a coach, but it was kind of a magical year last year for him.
Yeah, there was some good luck and good fortune. There were games where the stats weren't pretty for TCU, and they still won and they still covered. So you got to figure that.
They lost a lot on defense too. So yeah, they did. No doubt. There's a lot that they lost.
A lot of personnel. I'll be honest. I'd take Colorado before TCU, but I'm not totally full on drinking the Kool-Aid yet with Deion here with Colorado. I know the talent level has been upgraded as significantly as any one college football team from one year to the next with what he's brought in. Compared to what's just been a dreadful program, Colorado, the last few years. But let's see it all come together first. That's just my stance on it. Texas Tech, Wyoming. Next up now, we've got Texas Tech, a sizable road favorite here in Laramie, 13.5, 14-point road favorites, 52 the total. I certainly I haven't bet this. I do have a strong lean to Texas Tech, though. Even though we know it can be difficult in Laramie, Wyoming, I like what I see from Texas Tech coming into this year. Tyler Shuck returns as the starting quarterback, second year now with the Red Raiders. Of course, he started his career at Oregon. He looks like he's finally healthy now, and he's a guy that can throw the ball, can run with it a little bit. I'm a fan of Tyler Shuck. I think they'll be good on offense. Taj Brooks leading them at the running back spot. Jaron Bradley, Dre McCray, Miles Price, 3 great talents at receiver. I think they're going to be able to score points. I like their young head coach, Joey McGuire. For this Texas Tech squad. The one thing, too, I want to keep in mind with Wyoming is that, this can be a tough home environment for them in Laramie, but keep in mind, too, they have struggled against Power 5 competition at times in the past, and I worry about that being the case once again for Wyoming here in this game. I like Craig Bowl. Don't get me wrong, but look, last year at times, what did we see? We saw them lose 38-24 to BYU. We saw them lose 30-0 to Fresno State, and we saw them lose 38-6, in their first game of the season against BYU. And keep in mind, at home in Laramie, this team lost 33-16 to San Jose State. So to me, I get it. The home field there, and the elevation, the altitude can be tricky, but I think there's a class difference between these two teams. And I actually think Texas Tech has the chance to make some strides on the defensive side of the football. We never think of Texas Tech as a great defensive team, but I thought last year they made improvements on that side of the football. And I think you're going to see that once again here this year. This team is going to be able, I think, to be able to take those further strides on defense. So I haven't bet it. It's a hefty number at 14, but I don't want Wyoming. I'll tell you that in this game. I don't want the Cowboys. Their quarterback situation has never been great. They didn't have a great passing game last year, and they're going to have to probably put some points on the board if they're going to hang with Texas Tech here. And Andrew Peasley, the Utah State transfer, is very erratic last year. 52% completions, almost as many interceptions as touchdowns. Not great, and I worry about that here coming into the new season, and especially against a Power 5 defense to start the year facing this Texas Tech team. All right, Nevada USC will roll up. I think we've got Conor Mack returning here. We'll let him settle in. But Nevada USC is next. USC 38-point favorites, 66 the total. We got C-Mac with us again. Quickly, C-Mac, any thoughts for you, Texas Tech, Wyoming?
I don't really have much in that game. So let's just we'll go next.
Nothing wrong with that. Nevada USC. I already bet this thing over. I saw everything I needed to see last week against San Jose State with USC. This defense is still room for improvement, okay? And last week, Chevin Cordero and the Spartans, for a good part of that game, they're throwing the ball up and down against USC. And only late did USC's defense really start to get some consistent stops. And that, to me, is still going to be the issue. But as you saw with Caleb Williams and the USC offense, they're going to be able to pop for 40, 50 points at any given time. That is how incredibly explosive they are. So there's really nothing more to add to that. USC should be able to do whatever they want on offense, just like they did against San Jose State, against another Mountain West defense here facing Nevada. The question is, can you get at least some offense from Nevada? And down the stretch, we saw Nevada, offensively at least get a little bit better. And it looks like this year, their quarterback situation, they had Shane Illingworth, the Oklahoma State transfer there. He's back, but he's battling with Brendan Lewis, Colorado transfer, for the starting quarterback job for Nevada. And I just think right now USC's defense, after what I saw last week, I think they're better talent-wise, personnel-wise, but clearly it's going to take them a few weeks to really start to show improvement. To me, that was indicative of last week. And for that reason, I like over again. And the total's been bet up to 66. I agree. I think you get USC doing a ton of damage here, and you get just enough from Nevada to put the game up and over the total. What do you think here, C-Man?
Yeah, this number is really big. I wonder if Nevada can score a little bit. We talked about last week how Cordero and this offense, and you saw he's pretty good. The guy can run. He's dual threat. He can throw. I don't know if we get the same here from Nevada, but I have a tough time trusting the SC defense. I thought it looked all right at times, but still they had some bad blown coverage. That one before half was really bad. That touchdown slip in. And, man, Caleb Williams, they have all the weapons. Some of those plays he made last week were crazy. He'll just keep doing it. He's got to watch it with him running it. He's going to keep him healthy and not injured. But, yeah, there should be a ton of points in this one, but it's still too big. I'm not defense like that till I see really good progression. I couldn't lay points with SC. So maybe you just keep looking team total with them.
Team total over or full game over?
That's
what I'd be looking at here. Because look, to put it into context, they scored 56 points last week and they didn't cover, as 31-point favorites. 56 points, and as a 31-point favorite, they didn't cover. So now, you're asking them to 38 points, and I get it. Nevada, is worse than San Jose State, but 38.5-point favorite and scored 56 as a 31-point favorite last week and still couldn't cover. So that tells you, I think if you're going to bet this thing, look team total instead of the spread and look at for sure.
Yeah, and I mean, I would take the dog. There's just no way I'd lay it with SC.
Yeah.
I'd look at the team total that way, or at the flip side, I don't mind the points with Nevada because it's a shit ton.
Yeah.
I just don't know if I bet that here, this week.
All right, Boise State and Washington. I'm looking forward to seeing this. This is one of the better games on Saturday. We've still got Washington, though. Sizable favorite here, 14.5. 58 the total. This is another game where we might see some points scored because we know what that Washington offense looked like last year with Michael Penix, the Indiana transfer. Absolutely outstanding season he had. And, of course, an excellent offensive-minded head coach who was, of course, previously at Fresno State. And we saw the great job he was able to do transforming this Washington offense because Kalen DeBoer, when he took it over prior to last year as the head coach, this offense was dreadful. The previous coach before that was just brutal, and the offense suffered because of it. And they bring in Penix, they bring in this great offensive-minded head coach, and they just lit it up last year, averaging almost 40 points per game, 370 passing yards per game, top 10 in passing offense, top 10 in scoring offense last year. Defense, though, is where the improvement has to be made. They endured a lot of injuries in the secondary. But they are a lot better experienced there now, more experienced, healthier there. That should be interesting. They had a lot of injuries on defense. I think they're going to be a lot improved. This is a game where I almost laid the points with Washington. I lean to the Huskies here. I've got questions about Boise, even though Talon Green, who's going to be there now, starting quarterback, he took over midway last season for Hank Bachmeier, who was ineffective, and then they fired the OC, and then Talon Green took over, and he played better. And I think their offense is good, but I think on the defensive side of the football, you look at this Boise team. Boise's defense had to do their best to keep them in a lot of games last year. And I think if you look at this year's defense, got a few more question marks than I've become accustomed to with having for a Boise State team on the defensive side of the football. So you put it together, and I'm leaning favorite. I'm leaning over in this game. Haven't bet either one yet. What do you think here, Conor?
Yeah. I like it to be a little bit lower. I think there's points. The only thing I've always had this a little bit, unless I really love taking a lot of overs week one, because and the games this last week, as we see with the clock we didn't get into, if there's just going to be points, there will be. Obviously, there's probably people are getting it down 6 less plays a game or blah blah blah.
I think there were 3 overs and 4 unders with the 7 games in week 0.
Yeah, that was right. So I think this one could get over from what we saw last year with Washington with their defense. And they're a team. There's another one. I like them. They're at home here. But a defense like that, laying double digits, I want to pump the brakes. But I don't know if I've seen enough out of Boise to jump on them here, catching the 2 touchdowns. I got to see more. They did bring back, their wideouts are back. They have some decent pieces on offense. And their defense at times was pretty good, just depending on the opponent. You mentioned Penix, some people put in here, and he should light it up. And I think Washington wins. I just don't know if they cover this number. I definitely lean over too.
Very interesting game, I got to admit, coming up here as well. Coastal Carolina and UCLA. We've got the Bruins 14.5-point favorites, 65 the total. And shout out to our guy, Wine Time Sports, telling us how the quarterback situation is going earlier on during the show in the chat with UCLA. It looks like both of their quarterbacks that have been battling it out are going to get playing time for Chip Kelly here in this game for UCLA, talking about Ethan Garbers and Colin Schlee. Who transfers in, of course, from Kent State. It'd be interesting to see how that goes. Big shoes to fill here. You're talking about a guy that really turned into one hell of a career there at UCLA, and Dorian Thompson-Robinson, who's no longer there. It'll be interesting to see how the next wave goes for UCLA coming into this season. Coastal Carolina, look, they bring back, of course, Grayson McCall. He's been here a long time, no question about that. And I think when you look at this Coastal Carolina squad, their offense should be pretty good still, even though they lose their head coach. And I was a huge fan of Jamie Chadwell and the job he did. Of course, he's with Liberty now and taking over at Coastal Carolina. Now coming into the new season here is Tim Beck. Man, I'm telling you what, when it comes to Tim Beck, the NC State offense was okay and good, but was never great under his watch. I'm wondering, look, if I'm Tim Beck, don't screw it up. I think he probably wants to put his own imprint and style and scheme in this offense, but it's been working so well. This RPO type of offense that they've been running. Don't screw with that, but I don't know exactly what kind of, what's Tim Beck going to do? Is he going to want to put his fingerprints on this offense? It's been a great offense. That's never been Coastal's issue. Coastal's issue last year was defense. Defense couldn't stop anybody last year for the Chanticleers. So I do have a small over bet, but a part of that is that I think if Tim Beck doesn't say, okay, I'm here now, we're going to do the offense my way, then this offense should still be excellent. But I have a feeling they're going to try to throw the ball more and be more balanced, not just as run heavy as they've been. How's it going to work? That remains the question. I'm certainly not laying 14.5 with UCLA in the opener here. And we saw, by the way, last year, we saw a Sunbelt team, South Alabama, give UCLA all kinds of problems in one of these early in the season games and almost beat them here in the Rose Bowl. So I lean to the dog here, Coastal. Even with that defense still last year, it was historically bad. And I don't know if it's going to be all that much better. It should be better by default, but that's not saying a whole lot. But I still lean dog, and I like the total more over, in my opinion. What do you think here, Conor?
Yeah, I think that's a big key for me looking at this. Well, can the defense be a little bit better? Because it was just awful last year. And yeah, what does Tim Beck do here at head coach? I think, as long as McCall is there, I think you're live here as a dog catching a couple touchdowns in this one. I've never liked it. I can't believe Chip Kelly's still there. I've just never, this is what his 6th or 7th year, UCLA, and he's doing more of the same stuff. So Garbers is named the starter, but yeah, like you talked about, Moore and Schlee are expected to play. It works for some teams, 2 or 3 quarterbacks, but overall, I don't like it. And it just seems like a whole bunch of confusion for this UCLA team. They lost some of their top wideouts, and that was the defense that was just getting back and forth. UCLA, one of the best over teams for me last year, cashing tickets. It seemed like their games could just slip over the number. Does it here in the mid-60s? Maybe. I lean that way, but I lean the dog here with Coastal.
All right, Middle Tennessee State and Alabama. Alabama 39-point favorites, 51.5 the total. Totals dropped from 55. Middle Tennessee is not a team I'm looking to bet on because I think this program's kind of been in a bit of a decline in recent years. That being said, they had a strong finish last year, and actually they had a little bit of a better season compared to the last few years, but I'm not sure under Rick Stockstill if the program is going to continue that trajectory. They've got Nicholas Vattiato as their quarterback, likely starter for this game and to begin the season. We'll have to see how that goes. Last year, this team on the offensive side of the football, really they were pedestrian on both sides of the football. On defense coming into this season, they've got a lot more veterans. They've got 8 defensive starters back. That's good. They do lose, one of their best players, Jordan Ferguson, on the defense, but the rest of the D line's pretty well intact. The linebacking core as a little bit of turnover as well. But you look at the secondary coming across the group too, a lot of returning experience there. But Alabama, man, this is about as big a question mark we've ever had for Alabama in a long time at quarterback this year, because they've had some good ones. They had Bryce Young. They've had McCarron. They've had so many really good, quarterbacks over the years. No question about that. Jalen Hurts. Go on and on and on. But Jalen Milroe has failed to grab hold of this starting job. We kind of think that Nick Saban's leaning to Milroe as the starting quarterback, but he's a very athletic quarterback and can run, but he is a very mediocre passing quarterback. And we saw that last year, just not accurate enough throwing the football. And he's being pushed by Tyler Buchner, who never impressed me all that much at Notre Dame. This is as unstable a quarterback situation as I've seen at Alabama entering a new season. So there's no way I'm laying 39 in this spot. I'm looking more at the total. I think the move to the under is warranted because I think Alabama is going to have a pretty good defense this year, really good, in fact. And I don't see Middle Tennessee going up and down the field. But Alabama's got big questions this year at quarterback, in my opinion. Even the skill position talent, maybe not quite the depth as they've had in the past. So I think the total, people betting this under, I think they're on to something. What do you think here, C-Mac?
Yeah, Middle Tennessee kind of started the year out okay and then just hit the skids after that. And I don't know how much they can do against the Bama defense like you talked about in this one. Bama wins. It's just, can they cover this big number because the quarterback. Down the line, this will get to them. One of these guys has come through. I've seen enough of Buckner. Live Notre Dame games all
I think
the
we
time.
all have, yeah.
Yeah. And Milroe, I don't see it either. I don't think he can, be effective throwing it that often. And then the last guy, Ty Simpson, I don't know if he even has a shot. So this one's tough. I would lay the points with Bama or pass.
All right, lay the points with Bama or pass, says Conor. And you know what? I probably agree with that. It's just I don't know if I want to lay these points with this quarterback. Now, maybe it doesn't matter, against a team like Middle Tennessee, and they'll still rack up the points. Who knows? But
you could just hand it off. Yeah. They still have Burton. They still have a few receivers. Just they got to have guys get it to them.
Yeah, because definitely they could still just run the football down a team like MTSU's throat. And just overpower them, which they're very capable of doing. And then the quarterback doesn't become as much of a factor at that point. All right, New Mexico and Texas A&M here. We've only got a handful of games left, and we'll try to get them done here in 20 minutes before Sharpie takes the air with Balking Dead. Texas A&M 38-point favorites, 48.5 the total in this game. I actually laid it with A&M. I really did. I think it's actually, this is one of those teams I think just so dramatically underachieved given the personnel and talent that they had on the roster. And this year they can only go up. And I think they've got the ideal opponent to just beat the shit out of, because I think New Mexico is maybe the worst team in the Mountain West. And I think one of the worst group of 5 teams in college football coming into the day. They have zero offense whatsoever. You could even go a New Mexico team total, but it's been disappointing for Danny Gonzalez. And the defense is actually the unit that was not half bad, but his defensive coordinator was Rocky Long, and Rocky Long leaves. And Danny Gonzalez is a friend of Rocky Long's. And Rocky Long says, I don't want to stay here, even though you're my buddy. I'm going to Syracuse. That's a red flag. That tells me there's something wrong internally with this New Mexico program. In my opinion, I think A&M runs it up. I might even do a first half full game split in this one. I think it gets really ugly for the Lobos. I don't know how they move the football on the road here against A&M's defense. What do you think here?
New Mexico in a lot of trouble. I mean, they're at the bottom of most everyone's rankings, bottom 10, even 5 for the Lobos. The one thing is laying these points, because I think A&M's defense I don't know how New Mexico might score, but can Conor Wegman come in and score a bunch of points? Because Texas A&M could not score. They just could not.
I like that quarterback, though. He showed you something.
You like Wegman?
He got better.
I did. He did a little bit. So, yeah, it's a big number. They should win convincingly here. So, I
don't like Bobby Petrino as a human being. I don't think many people do. And they don't like him as a head coach. But as an OC, I'll sign up for that. He's been a pretty good offensive coordinator in the past. And
keep him as OC.
Yeah, keep him as an OC and give a jolt to Jimbo Fisher. And Jimbo Fisher, pressure's on him now. Jimbo, he needs a bounce back year in the worst way. No question about that. Rice, Texas. We've got Texas 35-point home favorites, 59.5 the total in this one. This is probably one where I'd maybe target a Texas team total over, because I just don't know what we're going to get from Rice offensively against, a Texas team that I think can win the Big 12. They're around even money to win the Big 12. I think talent-wise, there's no question. You look at the rosters of every Big 12 team, there's no team with more talent than Texas. Can they not screw it up, is the question. Can Sark take them to the promised land? Can Quinn Ewers take a huge step forward at quarterback for Texas? And remember, if he struggles, they have tons of options to turn to. They like Malik Murphy a lot. They like Arch Manning, obviously, quite a bit as well, that are the other options at quarterback. So Quinn Ewers has to perform on offense. I think the pressure is going to be on him, and I think he understands that. And I think he's going to have a good season, because he knows there's always 2 guys standing in that quarterback room that could replace him, if he doesn't get it done. Obviously, look, Bijan Robinson's a huge piece to replace, but they like Jonathan Brooks. They like C.J. Baxter. Xavier Worthy and Adonai Mitchell are going to be great receivers. They're going to probably be able to score. If you look at Rice, it's a team that, I think still going to have some tough times this year. JT Daniels is their quarterback. And, now that JT Daniels is at Rice, that tells you all you need to know about the trajectory of his career. Georgia, West Virginia, Rice just keeps going to a worse team and a worse school. I'm not trusting him to move the football on the road against this Texas team. I thought he was dreadful at times, quite honestly, last year for West Virginia. And he's gotten worse, not better, each and every year in his career. So I didn't lay the points, but I'm tempted by a team total, at least for Texas, or maybe just a first half look in this one. What do you think here, Conor? Rice, Texas?
That's where I was going to maybe look first half here with Texas, or even like you mentioned, the team total. This always seems Texas has just owned Rice too. They've just beaten them down. It seems like every year, and they have the big game the next week against Alabama. And we just talked about them. So the quarterback, and it could be an issue. Quinn Ewers, he's not the guy. I'm telling you right now, unless he proves me wrong, I think he'll be out at some point. And, not this week against Rice. I don't think he's going to be the guy in the end. But I'd lay it here with Texas. They should take care of business.
I agree. I definitely think it's going to be a rough go of it for Rice in this one. Total's tough.
Horrible defense.
Yeah,
Rice.
Horrible defense last year, and that's going to be challenging here, I think, for them in this first game. All right, next up here as we continue along, we've got UTSA and Houston, a rematch of last year, which was just an incredible game, unless you were a Houston fan. But you got 1.5-point road favorite, 60.5 the total in this game. Or sorry, UTSA fan, but it was just a crazy game last year with these two teams back and forth. It went to overtime and back and forth it was, and it was just a thriller. And if we get anything close to that this year, that's definitely going to be a good sign, no question about that. But you look at last year, it was just one of those crazy back and forth football games. Houston with the 37-35 win over UTSA. Houston now, of course, in the Big 12. Let's see how that. Change in conference affiliation, how they deal with that, Houston. But I think UCF is going to deal with it better. I even think Cincinnati is going to deal with it better, even with the questions and Luke Fickell moving on and a lot of changes there. I mean, to me, Houston just last year, the offense, even with Clayton Tune, who's now gone, wasn't great. The defense took a huge step back. They were ripped apart in so many games on the defensive side of the football last year. Now, they do have Donovan Smith, former Texas Tech quarterback, coming in, and he's earned the starting job for Houston and Dana Holgorsen here. But I don't think they can match UTSA on offense. I think UTSA is actually chomping at the bit here because they know they lost a heartbreaker. They were the better team than Houston most of last year. They probably should have beat them in that first game. I think they're the better team than Houston coming into this season too. So, and Frank Harris back at quarterback, and we know he has been just absolutely terrific. Dual threat, can run, can throw, and Jeff Traylor's just done a remarkable job coaching this program from the very beginning. I think there's a lot of reasons to think that on offense they're going to have success here in this game. Now, they do have Joshua Cephas battling an injury to Corian Clark as well in camp, but it looks like DeCorian Clark could still play, and Joshua Cephas has been practicing and probably will play. So that's good news at receiver for UTSA going into this game. I like UTSA. I like over the total. I think you're going to get points, and I think UTSA is the better team, and I'm okay with picking them here, taking them here at around a pick 'em here, -1.5. What do you think here, Conor?
You know what? I lean that way too. I don't know what Donovan Smith does here.
Which coach would you rather have, Traylor or Holgorsen? That's got to be an easy choice.
Yes. I think they have the better quarterback, the better coach, and Houston was a great defensively. They have bringing back some people they think they could be better, like their D-line, but I don't know. And I think UTSA has the better defense. I really do, or what they bring back. So should be a good game, obviously. Last year was, but I lean UTSA as well.
All right, Conor Mack leaning to UTSA as well. California, North Texas.
I'm glad we're all on the right side of history, lads. Let's go.
That was for you, Jose.
Is. Way to go, Jose. And we're not saying that to make you feel good. I'm not a Houston fan. Anybody that this is not so much that I'm totally pro UTSA. I'm anti-Houston. They just discombobulated in so many games last year. Penalties too. very undisciplined team last year, Houston. And that's
tough to watch.
Tough to watch. Brutal. Yeah. Tough to watch all the penalties, the stupid penalties, undisciplined, totally unacceptable. And it falls on the coach. He has to take responsibility for it. And that was definitely one of the issues I had with Houston last year. All right, Cal and North Texas. Cal 6.5-point road favorites, 56.5 the total. I've never been a big fan of laying points with Cal, especially on the road, but this does kind of feel like a game they could win by margin. I actually like this team coming into the year, and I like them on offense. I think they're going to be a lot more explosive when you look at what they bring in. They bring in Sam Jackson. He's going to be their starting quarterback for this game. He beat out Ben Finley, and this guy's a guy that's got some athleticism to him. He can run with the football. He's a pretty good passer. And I think there's going to be reasons to expect some improvement from Cal. Cal's been a stagnant, slow-paced, methodical, run-heavy offense for most of these years with mediocre quarterback play. Chase Garbers was never consistent when they had him. And Justin Wilcox, though, bringing in Jake Spavital as his new OC, the former Texas State head coach, and they're going to go fast. And they're going to try to throw the football a little bit more. So I think this is kind of like Wisconsin, Conor. Take advantage of Cal overs. They've been a dead nuts under team for such a long, long time, but now they're going to throw the ball more. They're going to play faster on offense, and it's not going to be built into the total right away. I think North Texas, we know what they've been. They're capable enough on offense, but very, very bad on defense. So I don't know if that's going to change too much this season. We'll see what Stone Earl brings them at the quarterback spot. For them, they like what they saw from him in camp. Cal's defense usually very good, but finally, for the first time in years, Cal's defense, has to deal with a little bit of a turnover, and the D line's going to have to improve because that was a unit that, definitely was up and down last year. And the secondary pretty experienced, but I definitely think Cal's offense has the potential to be not only a lot better, but a lot more explosive. And for that reason, I kind of like this game over the total here, 56. What do you think, C-Mac?
Yeah, I can't take Cal because I need to see it, not as a touchdown favorite on the road. I got to see Jackson. I got to see this offense kind of go. So that's what best thing about week one here. You know what I mean? And you talked about they've always been this unbelievable under team for me. So this is a watch for me. And I don't know what we get from North Texas here at home. What do we get from Earl? The defense at times got shredded. Some games they would, play up and better. I still remember UNLV. I don't know, put like 50 on them, which is wild. Maybe Cal could do that here. So maybe you're right. But right now I'm off. I was hoping maybe you could get over 10 with North Texas, a double-digit home dog to start to look their way.
All right, we continue along. Just 4 games left. Virginia and Tennessee next up. And keep in mind with this game, it is a Nissan Stadium game, so basically the home of the Tennessee Titans is where this game is going to be played in Nashville. It's not a Knoxville home game at Rocky Top. We've got Tennessee 28-point home favorites, 56.5 the total in this one. Virginia is just a team that I'm not enamored with. I don't like the way the program's gone under Tony Elliott. Not a big fan of the quarterback here, Tony Muskett. Coming into this season, defense was just absolutely atrocious at times last year for Virginia. But being said, you are talking about 28-point favorite with a Tennessee team that loses a pretty damn good quarterback in Hendon Hooker. And Joe Milton is familiar. He was with this program last year. He got a bunch of playing time. But will that great Josh Heupel Tennessee offense just be able to keep motoring along with the quarterback change coming into this season? That remains to be seen. I definitely lean with the favorite here, Tennessee. I don't want Virginia, but first game, new quarterback. I might pump the brakes on it, but I certainly lean to the home chalk. What do you think here?
Yeah, this was a game I didn't want anything to deal with. I think Tennessee is going to be all right with Milton. I think he comes in and plays well. What do we get from this Tennessee defense that I thought played up at the first half of the year last year and kind of let it slip? Of course, injuries, everything else as the year goes on. But does a team like Virginia that's just so bad on offense take advantage, of it in this game? I'm not so sure. I actually wanted to look at this game a little bit more because I don't know if I can get here with the dog. This is a big number, but I just don't know if I got to look at Virginia a little bit more.
When you're only averaging 17 points per game, which Virginia was last year on offense, you got problems. Yeah, you got big issues. Yeah, you got big
program.
problems. And keep in mind, Tennessee's defense, which was not good when Heupel started there. I mean, it got better last year, and I think the defense actually not bad this year for Tennessee. So it's why they got, I think, the potential to get a 4-touchdown margin here. So that's, again, not sure I'll get involved and bet it, but I definitely lean in that direction. All right, we've got South Alabama and Tulane. This is one of the better group of 5 games on Saturday. I'm really looking forward to this. These are 2 really good football teams here. We've got Tulane 6.5-point favorites, 55 the total. The coast is clear now for Tulane in the AAC because you think about UCF's gone, Cincinnati's gone. There's so many really good teams from that conference that have departed, and now the coast is clear here for Tulane to really, really start to dominate the AAC. And of course, what an outstanding job it was last year winning the AAC, upsetting teams like Cincinnati, UCF, and others to win the conference. They bring back Michael Pratt, who is probably going to be one of the best group of 5 quarterbacks in the country this year, maybe even be one of the best quarterbacks in the country, period, this year. That's how good that kid is at quarterback for Tulane. The offense should be fine when you look at what they've got back there. The defensive side of the football, that's really where Tulane took a huge stride forward last year in their big bounce-back turnaround season, one of the biggest single-season turnarounds in recent college football when they won, 2 games or 3 games 2 years ago. And then last year, they win the AAC, and then they end up going to the Cotton Bowl, and they beat USC in the Cotton Bowl, that huge upset. So an incredible, magical year. And I was along for the ride, and I think you were too, Conor. A lot of Tulane bets for the both of us last year. Now the question is, are they still going to have that value? Everybody knows they're good now. They're coming off that great season. Is the point spread value still going to be there? And I like South Alabama quite a bit. I'm a big fan of this team coming into this season. I think they got every opportunity to win the Sun Belt, go over their win total. I like the job that their head coach Womack's doing with the program. They're getting better. They've got experience in the quarterback spot with Carter Bradley, the Toledo transfer, and Desmond Trotter. Both of them are back this year. Whoever they go with, is a capable quarterback. Damian Webb at running back, good receivers. I think the defense was very good last year. This is definitely a South Alabama team I like a lot. Obviously, it's a Tulane team I like a lot. So this is a really tough game to choose a side for me in this one. Probably a game I'll just be watching rather than betting. Less than 7, I lean Tulane. Probably if this was above 7, I'd lean South Alabama. It's really that kind of game for me. What do you think, Conor?
It is. This is one of the games that I'm excited on this week 1. Both teams, I bet a ton last year, and I like them again. You mentioned Pratt is back for Tulane. Just had a crazy year last year. I think they're going to be good again with Fritz, but I'm a little bit higher on South Alabama. I think they're pretty loaded. I love the defense. You mentioned Carter's back, Webb. I think this team could be really, really good. And I think this game's close. You mentioned there are 7s out there. With 7 right now, I'm leaning South Alabama. I think you take those points in what could be a really good football game. That's tight.
Yeah, the Jaguars, South Alabama, their biggest weakness on defense is the secondary. There's a lot of their key production from last year and the pass defense gone, and that worries me a little bit here against, obviously, we know a very able quarterback like Michael Pratt. But still, I mean, I think it's a competitive game. I think, like I say, this is just one of those at 6.5. I actually would probably prefer South Alabama, but I prefer them at 7 or more. I don't want to take just 6.5 with them. I don't.
Yeah, and does this game get into a bunch of points? Because I think Tulane's defense, they lost a bunch of guys on defense. They kind of stepped up when they needed to, the defense. You know, kind of bend, don't break last year. So can South Alabama run it on them? And does that we get a bunch of points, or maybe is this a little bit more low scoring and tight, 2017 type game?
Yeah, that's the big question because – and the one thing, too, keep in mind is people weren't projecting Tulane's defense to be great last year, and they turned into a pretty solid and much improved defense. Will that continue this year is going to be the question. They did lose, significant pieces, on that side of the football, as you mentioned. Will they be able to still be able to withstand that when you look at it? But very, very interesting. Some of their top tacklers last year are gone. The skill positions, they lose a few, but still a really good team. And I trust Willie Fritz, who's done. And you see the recruiting rankings too. Tulane has really improved and stepped things up with recruiting. the last few years. And it's going to even be better now after that terrific season they had last year. All right, 2 games left. Louisiana Tech, SMU. We've got SMU 20.5 point favorites, 65.5 being the total in this game. This is one of those deals where, and you have to evaluate each team going to a new starting quarterback differently. Not all are equal. Yeah, you lose Tanner Mordecai, but everybody in this SMU program, including Rhett Lashley, their head coach, really likes Preston Stone. And Preston Stone did play a little bit for SMU last year. He's a really good quarterback. In fact, they think he could be every bit as good as Mordecai. So that's high praise. So I actually think they're fine at the quarterback spot with Preston Stone here for SMU. They're still, they lose obviously a terrific Rashee Rice gone. They're going to miss him, but they still have Jordan Curley, Jordan Hudson, Jake Bailey, good receivers, Jalen Knighton, Tyler Levine in the running back spot. It's a Mustangs team that I think offensively is still going to be able to put up their share of points. I'm telling you what, right now, after what I saw from Louisiana Tech last week, I should say, against Florida International, I'm still not sold on Hank Bachmeier. That was a brutal performance, I thought, for much of that game. He really hasn't improved all that much so far. And yeah, he finally got it going a little bit in the second half, but settling for field goals, not finishing drives with touchdowns. That's going to be a concern facing a team like this that I think is going to be able to move the football. I know Louisiana Tech defensively didn't allow anything to Florida International, but you go from that offense of FIU to this offense of SMU, and that's a huge, huge upgrade in terms of challenge for this Louisiana Tech defense, which, look, last year was not good. Last week they started out rough, they shut them down in the second half. That's a very limited FIU offense. I understand why the money's pouring in on SMU. I was not impressed with what I saw either side of the football, really, but especially on offense from Louisiana Tech last week. So less than 3 touchdowns, I'd lean SMU. I might look at a team total for SMU over 65.5. It could get there, but I just don't know what we're going to get from Louisiana Tech on offense. I know SMU's defense has had issues over the years, but to me, this is probably a better defense than we've seen out of an SMU team in a few years. And that worries me for what I saw, or what I didn't see from Louisiana Tech and from Hank Bachmeier on offense last week. So I lean to the favorite, maybe a team total over on the favorite, something I might look at. What do you think, Conor?
I don't buy it, SMU and his defense, flat out. And I don't think this football team should be laying 3 touchdowns. I'd like to get over 21 here to back Louisiana Tech, who I was not impressed with. It was horrible. Penalties, the missed field goals, just bad drives were not good for Louisiana Tech. But until I see a team like SMU's defense come to play as this big a favorite, I can't take them, because I think Preston Stone will be pretty good. I think there will be points. They will score on La Tech. And FIU kind of had trouble there, especially in the second half. And both defenses are great, but I just think this is a team that shouldn't be laying 3 scores. And I don't trust Bachmeier. You're right, but he's not laying points now. We're catching 3 touchdowns, so I think there's a little value here with Louisiana Tech.
All right, we've reached our final game, which is also the debut for the Saturday night Big Ten game of the week on NBC. They're doing a Big Ten night game on NBC, and this is the first one, Saturday night. That's those damn ads with Fall Out Boy. You've heard them over and over again. Here comes Saturday night, West Virginia and Penn State. You're going to hear that before this game. Penn State, 20.5 point home favorites, 50.5, 51 the total. I'm on West Virginia. And I know this team's in turmoil. I know this program's in turmoil. I know their head coach, Neil Brown's on the hot seat. I know this team wasn't particularly good last year. All of that I'm fully aware of in placing this West Virginia bet, and Garrett Green now probably the likely starter taking over at the quarterback spot. An offense that was not great last year, obviously, for the Mountaineers. Big time question marks about the trajectory of this program here in recent years, that they're getting worse, not better. But I'm going to dare Penn State in their first game of the year to win by 3 touchdowns with James Franklin, who I've never been overly fond of him as a head coach. But yeah, obviously a 5-win team last year, West Virginia. Really, really tough sledding for them. I do like what they've got, though, at running back. And they've got the running back spot looks to be pretty solid. coming into this season, and I think they're going to really rely on that. The offensive line, I think, is going to be much better. They got 5 returning starters, West Virginia, on the O-line, including an all-world center as well as Zach Frazier. That's good news coming into this season. So I think this offense can only go up, just because the pieces around the quarterback, I think are going to be a little bit better. It's not like Penn State's without their questions, coming into the season on the offensive side of the football. I was never week in, week out thrilled with the performance of Sean Clifford, but, you still don't have him anymore. You've got to go to Drew Allar. There's a lot of high expectations on him taking over at the quarterback spot for Penn State, but let's see how it goes in the very first game of the year. Penn State should have a pretty good defense. I mean, that does worry me a little bit for West Virginia. They're going to be able to move the ball consistently enough and finish drives with points enough to stay within 3 scores in this game. But, to me, there's enough questions on the offensive side of the ball. We know historically Penn State's always been a very flighty, bigger favorite, laying points of this magnitude. So, am I running to bet West Virginia? No. But I think the hype on Penn State being able to challenge Michigan and Ohio State in the Big Ten is a little overblown right now. I have to see it before I believe it. Give me the dog here. Give me West Virginia to not win, maybe not be right in this game, but we don't need them to be right in this game. They're getting 20.5 points. They're getting a very sizable number, and I'm going to take those points with the Mountaineers. What do you think here, Conor?
Yeah, Sean Clifford, obviously gone. Seemed like he was there forever. Drew Allar, we'll see what this kid can do. I think it's a big watch for Penn State. Singleton's a good running back. I think they have some good pieces. The defense should be pretty good. West Virginia, on the other hand, one of the better things you mentioned with Frazier, I think, is that offensive line. It just, them on the road is kind of a stay away. They are catching 20 here, like you talked about. So I'm a little interested. And one thing, James Franklin, big games. I don't want him. Him laying almost 3 touchdowns. I don't want him. Yeah. So this is a game for me. Right now I'm off. I don't blame you for looking at the dog. And maybe Penn State blows them out because West Virginia has struggled the last few years.
Yeah, that's the biggest worry. Now, the reason why I'm kind of going to say they can do enough offensively is because, the O-line is as good as it's been in a few years. They got everybody back. But as I said, and you're right about Singleton, and I neglected to mention him, Nick Singleton. I mean, he's going to be a really good running back, like probably their best one they've had since Barkley.
Yeah.
Since Saquon Barkley at Penn State. They're comparing his ceiling is that high, like Saquon Barkley type of production. But at the same point in time, they were an excellent defense last year. They did lose, Joey Porter Jr., Jair Brown, PJ Mustipher, a couple of key guys from that defense, but they reloaded pretty well there. And look, I'm not a fan of Manny Diaz and the job he did at Miami when he was the head coach there, but he's back in his preferred role. He's back in his comfort zone, DC, defensive coordinator. That's where he's been at his best, when he's been in the defensive coordinator role. So I do get concerned that West Virginia can do it if they can do enough offensively here. But I've seen enough James Franklin. I've seen enough Penn State. Bigger game and points of this magnitude, laying them as a favorite is not something that's been a good bet long-term. Under this head coach with Penn State. So,
and we don't have a starter, right, for West Virginia, the quarterback.
Garrett Green, probably. Garrett Green,
probably. Have they named him though? Yeah,
they have not. But he was ahead of the other quarterbacks in camp last I looked in terms of the battle. So I'd expect it to be him over Nico Marchiol and Sean Boyle, who are the other quarterbacks battling for that spot. I think it'll be Garrett Green. Garrett Green does have some experience, at least if you look at his stats last year. For the Mountaineers, the numbers weren't great, 55% completion, but he did get into 9 games and had 500 passing yards. So this is a guy that does have experience starting here for West Virginia. And right now, I'm assuming he's going to be the starter here on Saturday night against Penn State in Happy Valley. All right, there you go. That is hitting the books for this week. We gave you, as usual, it'll be about a 2-hour show most of the season. That's the week 1 card. We got through all the Thursday games, all the Friday games, and the majority of the marquee games on Saturday. So if you missed anything, you can rewatch the entire show right here on the Pub Sports Radio YouTube channel. Jose is going to be posting individual game video clips too And we encourage you to watch those. If there's a specific game that you're interested in, you can check those out later. I'll make sure I post those like I did last week as well. So make sure if there's any portion of the show you missed, you check it out later on. Conor, final thoughts before we wrap this thing up?
Always. Shout out to the chat real quick. I want to hit it up. And as soon as we end here, go watch Sharpie. We ran a little bit into his time, but hit the like button as we say all we ask. But Ron, good to see you, my guy, Ron Crawford. Star Child, Andrew G, The Real TP, Rants, all the guys are here all the time. Justin, everyone in here, appreciate it. I saw Cab, Paul Taylor, The Sailor, Oz B, everyone up and in here. Cab, there he is. Moneyline Mills, Johnny K, appreciate it. Let's get it. We're back. Full slate. I love it. So let's get it.
All right, good stuff. We are back, and we're back each and every week. I want to make a program note for next week, though. Next week is Labor Day on Monday. I am away on Monday for the annual Ticat home game, so we're going to move the show to Tuesday next week, Tuesday at 1 o'clock.
One time only.
One time only. Oh, no, of course, definitely. It's right back to Monday for the rest of the season after that. But just for next week only, it'll be Tuesday at 1 p.m. Eastern, 10 a.m. Pacific. The day after Labor Day. So we'll be with you next Tuesday, September the 5th, 1 p.m. Eastern, 10 a.m. Pacific for next week's edition of Hitting the Books. Thanks to Jose Bouquet for producing behind the scenes. For Conor Mack, I'm Ian Cameron. Have a great week. Enjoy week 1 of college football. Enjoy the games and good luck. And we're back with you next Tuesday for another edition of Hitting the Books right here on Pub Sports Radio.